We out of red in England. All aboard, yeah, you know it's Hype Train FC. Modern ambition, we got blue and gold in our kit, plus you know we the champs of the league. And we don't quit. Started from grassroots, yeah, the sport, we ain't taking it light. You know it's real, from fantasy to the field. You better believe the hype. Yeah.
Hello, one and all. My name is Robert Austin, and a very warm welcome aboard the home of Hype Train FC on our official YouTube channel and to another edition of our podcast. Today, I've managed to wrangle and whip for the first time a member of the referee clergy onto the pod today from the Berks Bucks FA. I'm joined by Laurence McNaughton, who was within the first 2 years of his referee qualifications. And if you follow the pod or if you've been watching along at home, a lot of the themes of the pod so far have been me talking about or trying to educate and learning about the basic tenets of grassroots football and how to get involved, the pitfalls and some of the challenges and experiences that we've gone through. So it's important today that we take another track and we look at refereeing, and Laurence and me talk in length and at depth about some of the experiences and some of the challenges and some of the things that he has to overcome as he's looking to build on his first 2 years and his qualifications as a referee. So without further ado, let's get straight into it as me and Laurence talk about refereeing. We talk about wider football and its implications and everything else that involves being a referee on a Saturday or a Sunday or even throughout the week, throughout the Berks Bucks and the English region. So I hope that you enjoy the podcast. Make sure you like the video, make sure that you give us a subscribe, and let's get straight into the action. Hi everyone, Rob from Hype Train Podcast here. Today we're going to be talking about all things refereeing. I finally managed to get an official on board the podcast today, and with me is Laurence. Do you just want to give yourself a quick introduction, mate?
Hello, I'm Laurence McNaughton. I'm a referee in Berkshire, so I referee at all different levels, from like youth games to the Grassroots, and also like men's games on Saturday and Sunday, like the Hellenic League and then East Berks League, and I also do academy games. Recently, like did a Spurs Academy thing, and yeah, so it's all different kind of levels of refereeing. And I used to play. I coach as well. I got like coaching qualifications, but and I would love to play. I don't think I'm too old to still be playing, but unfortunately my knees don't agree with that situation. But you know, I love the game and I love being part of it, and refereeing was a way of still being part of it as much as possible.
Of course. A bit of background for people that are watching at home. I met Laurence through one of our committee members, Owen Jones. Laurence come to some of our training sessions, some of my casual football sessions as well. And, you know, it just happens. You just get talking. And it was about a year ago I found out that Laurence was mainly now a referee. So, yeah, I'm really thankful that you've reached out. First things first, because I've never had a referee on board and it's a little bit new to me, some of the processes. I speak to a lot of club managers that have come onto the podcast, or people that work inside the FA or the county FA. So we'll start at the beginning. So first of all, how did you end up getting into refereeing? What was kind of your trigger point to say, okay, I'm not going to either be playing or I love football, but what got you into the officiating side?
I was coaching a team up until the end of last season, actually, but they got to sort of the end of under 16s and they all kind of went off to do other things. And I've been doing a little bit of refereeing, like in amongst that, but sort of that was kind of gradually increasing, and then sort of since August with the friendlies starting, and then the season proper, that's been my main focus in terms of getting into it. I suppose it's just, I mean, I'm still very early in the sort of my refereeing sort of journey, but I do a vast amount. So I mean, you know, like for example, the weekend just gone, I did 5 games. The weekend before, I did 6 games plus games in the week. So, you know, I know that's a lot more than some people, so while I've not been refereeing in a sense for all that long, I have done a vast amount of matches, and I've learned so much about how to do it better. So I'm a level 7 and working towards my level 6, and we can talk about more of that, how that works. So level 1 is like your top level. That's like your guys who are doing the World Cup, guys who are doing the Champions League final, that kind of stuff. The Premier League referees. At level 4 is when it kind of starts to get a bit more serious, because you need to do a fitness test, which you don't need to do before that. And that's when you're doing kind of like League One, Championship, maybe League Two, and 8 years again. So I'm still very early on, but I think the beauty of it is that I've still got lots of time to progress with that.
So the first level, what's the first level when you're refereeing, if you want to get qualified?
It's level 7 training. So I'm, if you like, which is kind of like, I'm a half step above that. So I'm level 7 proper. So level 7 is, you get a level 7 if you go to the refs course, which is, it's a day and a half, which features practical stuff, and you get, and then to complete that, to actually become a sort of full level 7, you then need to do 5 11-a-side games, like league games, not friendlies, like league games, and they get recorded, and that then you are a level 7, and then it progresses up. So right now I'm doing my level 6. So in order to do that, you need to register 25 games, and you get a mentor who comes and watches you referee. The only thing that's holding, because this season already, I've done 50 plus games, but what I haven't done is 5 assistant refereeing things, and that so you need to have done 5 assistant refereeing positions in order to qualify. And I've been very grateful to Richfield Rovers who have let me come and be linesman for them. They don't pay me. That's fine, because they're doing me a massive favour.
Is that in the Sunday League?
Yes.
Is that in the Sunday League?
Yes.
Oh God, I wish that you were there for when we played Richfield. We had some trouble with their club linesmen, as is the case with most club linos. They're hard to predict. They can be volatile.
Well, exactly. The linesmen. Due to the nature of the refereeing that I'm doing, the level I referee at, it's very rare when I'm not using club linesmen. So I did a league game between the academy stuff for Spurs against Wycombe Wanderers last week, and it was the first time. Was it second? No, sorry, second time when I'd had like impartial linesmen, as in like we were the team of 3, and like I had like the proper thing with the buzzer for the linesman thing, and it just makes such a difference, because usually like with the men's games, when I've got club linesmen, I don't want to. Nobody wants to be a linesman if they've come to play football. They don't want to be a linesman, and I completely understand that. But also, they're not impartial. They can say what they like, but they're not, and I get that as well. So I don't give them responsibility in terms of fouls, in terms of certain things. I give them responsibility for offsides and throw-ins, because both teams have got the same situation. So I go with it, and even though I say to the teams before we play, like if I think they're actually asleep, then I might have a conversation. But otherwise, I go with it because it's the same for both sides. So there's an element of fairness there, if that makes sense. But it's so that's So going back to what you were saying, Rob, about the journey for qualification. There's 7 levels, 1 being the target one.
And realistically, how many referees make it to this upper echelon of refereeing? For example, the Newcastle and PSG referee, we're filming out of context. This will be airing in January, but we're filming less than 24 hours after Newcastle and PSG played in the Champions League. And I don't hide it. I'm a massive Newcastle fan since I was about 3 years old. And this was the first European game in about 20 years where I'm literally sat at the edge of my seat, and the referee, who was the World Cup final referee, he refereed the Champions League final. It's made the biggest boo-boo, I think, in the Champions League in a long time, at least. And this is a reputable referee. So that Polish referee, Marciniak, and all of the like that are in the Champions League. What are the type of percentages that get up to that level? Do you know?
I couldn't give you those kind of numbers if I'm honest, Robert. But I mean, as you progress up the levels, the pool is smaller, and I think this is. I mean, obviously, there's been always conversation about refereeing within like the Premier League and such like, and we need better referees. Well, yeah. But the thing is, the pool of referees that they have in the Premier League, and forgive me, I couldn't give you an exact figure on the number of they have.
So good.
But you can look it up. But it's still relatively small. If you think about the number of football matches that are happening every weekend, from the most junior grassroots level right up to the top tier 1 level, Premier League, etc. Thousands of games, and all those games will have a referee. And now sometimes those referees will be unqualified. They might be a parent, they might be a coach, because there aren't enough. And then, I mean, like I said, I love coaching, and I still do a little bit of coaching for like development, and I do one-to-one coaching as well. I have my own academy for that, but but in terms of refereeing, I've really taken this as being like my main focus for the weekends at least, and it requires that dedication, in order to progress, and it requires an understanding of the laws. And I could go off on one here, so you have to stop me. But this is the thing. Like, footballers frequently, and I get it, they don't know the laws of football. they're like it's based, especially at amateur level. It's basically a development of what they were doing in the playground, and you see it. Like, I mean, then you get this kind of juxtaposition between some sort of very enthusiastic coach manager who wants to try and manage his team like he's Pep Guardiola, and then a team of players that just don't get it. And I might add, neither should they have to. I mean, being a professional footballer, like, just the athleticism is a whole different thing. I mean, I've seen teams screaming at each other because they're not tracking back. Over 90 minutes, you can't do it. There's a reason professional clubs have substitutes for a reason. Because you can't always do that. And I might add, even at the top level, players that do track up and down, they will get substituted off because it's tricky. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because because everything needs to be on the level, right? So if like the referees are only as good as the level. So these players insist on perfect refereeing performances. Well, first of all, that doesn't happen. But in the same way that, how many shots are completely off the mark, even at the top level. And so if you're doing that, it's the same difference for the referees. Yeah.
So just to intrude, I've been looking on the English refereeing pathway. For the sake of the podcast, I'll put a link into the overview of English refereeing, and it goes into everything Laurence has just described, all the pathways from the Premier League to the international stage, all the way down to grassroots. And roughly each season, there are 28,000 registered referees with the FA. And they're the people that have done the level 7 course and have completed it. And then each year, on annual here, according to the FA, 4,000 people start their refereeing journey each year, and they do the introduction to refereeing course that's available on the county FA websites. And typically, the percentages that make it through to the level 2A, which is the National League system, and that's where they would be classed as professional referees, is 2.1% of referees. So 2 in 100 will largely get the call up, but it's all dependent on pools of referees. So you've got 40 referees that officiate Premier League games, and then you work that out throughout the Football League and all the way down. And then once somebody retires, like Mike Dean had to retire recently, they called up 2 people from the 2A pool, which means that then you've got vacancies below that. So they kind of like promote upwards. And from everything I'm reading, it can take about 5 to 10 years if you're highly qualified and sought after by these FAs to really make your mark in that. Though I think at step level 1, I'm just reading you have to retire at 45, though they're upgrading that to 47 because referees are getting fitter. So 45-year-olds... they're pretty much done for. They're not allowed to referee, so they have to drop back down to the non-league system after that as well, or they can go abroad. Mark Klassenberg did that. He was a bit younger, but he wanted to extend his refereeing, so he went out to Saudi Arabia, didn't he? Infamously saying that it was hard to give penalties at Old Trafford. I remember what he said a few years ago. He said it's hard not to bide under the pressure of Fergie and 78,000 fans under him, and it's difficult.
That's the thing, though, isn't it, Rob? Because you are dealing with people. I mean, like, for all the laws, I mean, the nature of it's. I mean, one of the best things they've got in football is the Hawkeye, like, the goal line technology, because there's no grey area there. Like, It's either now I mean, I still feel sorry for Frank Lampard in the World Cup. Anyway,
I was. Do you know what's mad about that is that we're sitting here. 2010 that happened in South Africa. And 13, 14 years later, as soon as Hawkeye gets brought up, every English fan, we both did it. We both went, "Oh God!" we just have PTSD over that one moment. It just lives rent free in our heads, and just God. Anyway, sorry.
But there, it's simple. It's either a goal or it's not a goal, and that's it. And I mean, obviously, when you haven't got that, it becomes more problematic. But then there are certain decisions on the pitch that, for example, warrant a caution. So, for example, if a player insinuates that someone should get a yellow card or a card, then that's a yellow card offence. That's a bookable offence, and there's no grey area there, But there was so many things. I mean, I had a player, as I'm sure you've heard, I'm sure every single football in the world has heard, "Oh, ref, why'd you do that? That's exactly the same as that." And I mean, it brings to mind the philosophical thing that no one thing in football is ever exactly the same as the other. Rafa Nadal talks about that in tennis. Like, not one shot he's ever played has been the same as another one. I mean, loosely, yeah, sure, it's a backhand, it's forehand. And in football, every time Messi kicks that free kick with his left foot, it's not the same. He's not kicking the ball in exactly the same place, on exactly the same part of his boot. It's not hitting exactly the same part of the goal. The defence isn't lined up exactly the same way. And it's so every decision is that, and also where the players are, because obviously that's the other thing that you're dealing with is everybody on the football pitch will have an opinion. The coaches have an opinion. The spectators have an opinion, and that's where the pressure is. It's like, "Oh, ref, how couldn't you give that?" Well, from that position that the referee's in, you're giving him that authority to make that decision. And that's, the respect thing is just go with that. You're not in the same, if you were stood in exactly the same place, even then you might not see the same thing. And of course, it doesn't matter how many times you tell people and talk about it with people, they just will not accept it, despite the fact that you have ex-professional footballers, like professional pundits, analysts, and everything at the top level in the studios, still arguing about stuff that they can see on repeat, slow motion, close up, and they're still going, "Oh, for me that's not a foul," and then their mate going, "Well, for me it is." And when we're dealing with that situation, what chance as a referee on a Sunday morning, like with a pitch that's kind of with the grass that's a bit too long and the lines aren't quite worked out and the linesman's hungover and what chance has he got?
That's a classic hype train game. They're down at Calcott. They don't cut the grass. The lines have diesel painted lines. So what they do is they singe the grass with diesel so that no grass grows over the areas where they paint the lines, and they might paint them once a month. Right. And if it rains, you're just basically seeing just like a mark in the ground rather than the white lines. And yeah, typically you've got a bunch of, we don't have a lot of people that come to our games to support us. Typically now we've got a lot of younger lads in, their girlfriends and their parents come to watch, but typically other teams bring more of a following. And you mentioned Richfield. We played them a few weeks ago. They beat us fair and square. But they had about 60 people on the side and we had like 5 and everything. And yeah, and half of them were hungover and the liners were all hungover. And
a grassroots level, I mean, I think it's a really important conversation to have. In that situation, you haven't got the luxury of like stewards or a stand or whatever. And you hear these horror stories, I mean, from up north particularly, and maybe it's just because the news from the south doesn't travel so well, I don't know. But, about these referees that are chased, attacked because of whatever decision. And well, you're simply just not paid enough to like kind of put yourself in that. So, if there's a dubious call in the area, like, are you going to give a penalty when you're pretty sure that the guy over there might run onto the pitch and smack you in the face? Well, I'd rather not put myself in that. Now, not to say I'm all for making brave calls if I'm adamant, and I'm fortunate because I am taller, and I think that does help. But when you see like some of these, there's a lot of young girls who are refereeing now, which is fantastic. But then like what chance have they got when you got some brutish lad, like sort of going, what do you know about the game? It's no good. And I have seen the most bizarre things on a Sunday morning from grown men with the most nothing of decisions where they didn't feel it went their way, like a throw-in that they felt should have gone to them rather than the other team. I've seen this is not an exaggeration, grown men pulling their shirts over their heads, screaming, going, absolute beyond belief that's a call. But it's like, what are you doing? We're 5 minutes in. It's 0-0. It's in the middle of the pitch. I feel like maybe there's more bigger issues in your life, and it's. Would they behave like that at work? I doubt it. Rob, I could easily go off on lots of tangents here, so you've got to stop me.
No, it's fine. What I would say, I'll interject on that because when I speak to a lot of managers and players, there seems to be uniformity with. You said about how Grassroots is more akin to coming off the playground when you're a kid and basically stepping onto a grass pitch. It is very similar to that because the standards start low and they slowly progress up as you go up the ladder, which is why at the top end at the Premier League, I think you can probably say people get frustrated mostly because there's supposed to be this bar, this standard that referees are supposed to have. They're supposed to have basic common sense. They're supposed to have basic understanding and be able to communicate. And when that falls apart, people that have invested millions into the business, because that's what it is at that level, it's a business, they look at it and say the bar's not being met. And companies do these two things. They then exploit it online for views and clicks, which is what natural companies do when, for example, the Newcastle game yesterday, the highlights from BT Sport or TNT now were up after they put up all the referee reaction from all of their panel. So that was a bigger priority than the actual game itself. So there's a way to exploit it. And then as you get down through the football pyramid, through to the local county league, step 2, step 3, step 4, all the way down to grassroots, step 13, 14, whatever the level drops to, however many divisions there are, you kind of see those standards subside a little bit. And when I mean a little bit, I mean they fall off the face of a cliff, typically, depending on where you are, because you are typically dealing with people finding their feet, finding their way, a lot of new clubs forming, older clubs that... Richfield Vets, for example, I really do rate Stuart that runs the club. They're a veterans team, so they've got a lot of older people that come in and they mix some of the younger lads in with their team. But they're a new setup that have old principles, because they know how to. They were in the football world a few years ago, 5-10 years ago. And then you've got teams like myself or a team in my division called Barkham, who were a lovely bunch of lads and they're brand new, shiny as you like. But they have to learn at different paces and you get a bit of a mixed match. You get people that have 35 years experience to people that have 35 minutes of experience running these types of football. So I always think grassroots, it's better to have no expectation and then be blown away when you do have good expectations or good results. Absolutely. And then the slower you work up the ranks, when you start to deal with more qualified people, you can kind of start to hold everyone to a standard, because that's what ideally everybody should be aiming for. And I think it's more representative of society than it is football itself. I spoke to Alistair at the County FA, Alistair Kay. He is he's the head of governance, and he was telling me basically that their aim is to basically set a standard at grassroots level by imposing a lot of they're imposing obviously the sin bins. They did that a few years ago. This season they've added in the points deductions for repeat offenders, for people of misconduct charges if they can prove it. So they're trying to raise this bar that's at the floor just slightly up to get everybody in line to not push people away from the game. And because it makes a big difference. And I'll give you an example of with us for over 2 weeks. Our last Saturday game, we're in the EBFL Premier Division. So 2 divisions. We were playing a team called Southcote on our home game, and the guys that run Southcote, I really like Teresa. She's a very nice person. She's always complimentary to me, always offers me advice. She even helps organise referees for me once in a while if the league can't do it. So I've got nothing but time for her. But this game we played, they're not used to losing, and we beat them, and they were having a go at the referee for the whole game. But the referee was a champ, and he took it well, and he commanded the game very, very well. And because of that experience of having a referee that was qualified, he managed the game well in prickly conditions, and it was wet and raining and miserable as well on top of that. Going away from that, I said, oh, thank God we had a good referee for this game, because without it, we would have been absolutely... Well, it would have been a nightmare, to be honest. Without trying to keep it PG, it would have been awful. And then the following week, we played a cup game against a team that didn't organise the ref. They just didn't organise the referee. Basic admin. They didn't get in contact with me. They didn't get in contact with the referee. They didn't let the league know. The referee himself wasn't available anyway, and he could have told the league that he wasn't. But it was just a miscommunication. My brother ends up refereeing the first half, and a complete stranger referees the second half that I've never, and everything, and it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare, because I'm going to just for the sake of the podcast, I'm going to overlay the clips, and I'm just going to explain them. So there was 3 or 4 offside calls within 5 minutes. They've put the ball in the net 3 times, and the first time was where they've got a player that's 8 to 10 yards offside. They've clipped the ball over us, and they've then flicked it on, and the player that's won the ball is at the penalty spot. Everybody else is outside at the edge of the D, and they've taken a touch, put the ball in the net. We've all stopped because it's clear as day. They've run over to the lino with their arms up in the air. They're screaming and shouting. They're saying that we're being cheating and biased, and because they thought they could get away with it, they did that. And then they put the ball in the net again, where they've got 2 or 3 players that are 8 to 10 yards offside. And it got to the point where we were getting frustrated, because what you said earlier about players not knowing the rules, this team did not know what the offside rule was. And the best one was, this directly involves me, but we had the ball passed back. The left back passed me the ball, and it was a really wet, horrible pitch at Palmer Park in Reading. God, there's some of the worst pitches I've played on in the area, and I've just completely slipped over the ball because the pitch is like mud, and the ball slipped away from me. A player's collected the ball, and then his teammate has run to the 6-yard box, and he's passed the ball forward from the edge of the box to the 6-yard box, when the players then tucked it in on the line, and they've all gone off to celebrate. And our lino, I kid you not, has gone like this, because they've deliberately played it offside. All he had to do was just wait or tap it in himself. And then they've gone over to the referee. We've changed the lino because they're giving him grief. But, oh God, but yeah, they just didn't know what the rules were. And that's the difference sometimes of having the difference at basement level, what it makes to having, first of all, having officials and competent ones, compared to when you're left in the mud and you're considering, oh God, we're going to have a volunteer do it for 45 minutes a half. And it's a constant worry at my level in particular, that every week you don't know what you're going to be juggling with, if you're going to have a referee, if you're not. And it's just a constant pain. Yeah. And then
you've got, and then you know, through no fault of their own, you've got some guy who's stuck his hand up to like be the linesman.
Yeah.
And it's like, and the thing is, it's like, it's not an easy job, and actually, I think as I said earlier, you know, I'm doing these assistant refereeing things now, and it is whereas a referee, you're basically looking at the ball the whole time, and you know, the movements of the players, and you've got the luxury of not necessarily being in exact places. As an assistant, you have to be in exact places, otherwise, I mean, like even the difference of a metre, you won't see an offside, and especially if you're dealing with, I mean, without saying who they are, some of these teams around Berkshire are really quick, and you know, they're forward players, and the thing is like, you're going to miss them. You will miss them, and you'll say they're offside when they're not. I mean, it was interesting. Like Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher did a thing where they were training to be linesmen, and you know, these are ex-professional footballers, and they got it wrong. And actually, I think there's a thing. If you actually, you know, in actual practice, you know, you cannot physically look at 2 places at the same time. So basically, you're dealing with somebody with more experience than not who can say, "I'm pretty sure that's offside." And you know, as you'll see in the Premier League, like, numerous times, you know, the flag's gone up and there's been a call, or the flag hasn't gone up and there's been a call, and it's not. I mean, I don't know the stats on this, Rob, but you know, it's I mean, the linesman is often right, for sure. But for those close calls, not so much. I mean, you saw the fiasco that happened in that Spurs-Liverpool game. And I think the problem with that, the implications for the Premier League is one thing, but the implications for the lower league things is, for me, is huge. And I think that because what you're dealing with, well, if these top professionals can't get it right, then obviously these lower guys definitely can't get it right. So I'm going to query their calls because they're probably going to be wrong because, do you know what I mean? Like, because surely it's that the element of trust. And I think that, so while on the one hand you could argue that with all the technology, you'd hope they're going to get it right, but they still don't. So, give the guy at the lower leagues a bit of a break. I think the kind of the reverse way of looking at that is that people go, well, he's definitely going to get it wrong, so I will query that and I'll bully him, and a lot of players do that. I mean, a friend of mine was talking about a Sunday League team that he used to play for, where one of the players would actively sort of say to the team, right, boys, make sure that we antagonise the ref so we get decisions going our way, because the thing is, at the end of the day, it's like, how much hassle can one person deal with? And I always, and players do not want to hear it, and I hope they think about it, but at the same time, I mean, I have played. I get it, but it's like it's almost like you're this kind of alien who comes in to referee this game that you don't. As a referee, you don't understand it. Footballers, they understand it. You referee, you've got to be here, but we don't really want you here, and you don't get it. But the fact is, it's not. Like that. I mean, referees, I think, love the game. There was an article in The Guardian not so long ago about the fact that referees love the game, in some cases, like more than the players, because why the hell would you put yourself through 90 minutes of getting berated by some lads who are a bit upset that you've given a foul and whatever, which they didn't agree with, if you didn't love doing it? I mean, that for me, and I think, if in anybody's job, if you had 22 people telling you that you're doing it wrong every 2 minutes, like complaining, oh, mate, what'd you do? Oh, no, you have no idea. You haven't got a clue what you're talking about. Like that. Chuck, have you seen this? Have you seen this comedy going on? If you had that for 90 minutes, I defy anybody to continue to do a good job if they're getting berated in any profession. Could
you imagine if you're doing a remote job from the office and you're sending an email to Carol at HR or to Karen at HR, and you've got 20 people afterwards going, "That's not how you sign off on your emails." Everything, yeah.
But that's literally the case, and you'd end up with some kind of like you just like you won't want to send another email ever again. You're like, no, I'm just going to phone it in now, guys. But sometimes it's I think it's important to sort of see the light and the dark. You do get a lot of players who do get it. I mean, there's two things that I see sometimes on football matches. You get players that will tell you that they don't know you don't know what you're doing because I'm a ref and you don't know what you're doing. It's like, well, I'll tell you what, I don't think you are a ref, because if you were, you wouldn't say that. And on the flip side, you get people that don't really say much, but they'll tell their players, like, wait, just leave the ref alone. He's made a decision. Get on with it. Go with that play. And my money would be on them being the referees, like outside of their matches. Because if I see people who are berating the referee and then they say that they are a referee, I mean, that doesn't track for me, because it's
maybe not a good referee. Not a good referee. At least, there is that as well. There's a margin of error where there are people that aren't good at their jobs, regardless of the professions they do. So
you're absolutely right, Rob.
They do exist as well. I know there's a lot of football clubs that I've seen since 2019 when we formed that have come and gone, because you can just see they're just not going to last because they haven't got the right aptitude for it. And football teams typically should be a long-term thing. And you can always spot the troublesome teams that come in and out for a couple of years, typically to trophy scalp. They drop down on Sunday League in Reading. You find that a lot of teams don't get any success playing higher up in the Premier Division, and they meet together and they go, we need to reform as a new club and start again. I want to win something. And they start in Division 4, where everybody turns up and they don't know, they put their right foot on their left, they put their right shoe on the right foot, and they they can't kick a ball. There's some of them don't, they're just there sometimes to have fun with their friends. And then you get a team turn up that treat it like they're the Avengers of football, and then they're doing tiki-taka, run a bunch of pub teams for 90 minutes, and then they win. We were in a division where the Sunday leagues at the moment in our league are ridiculous, because the teams that are winning it are winning all 20 or 22 games and not dropping a single goddamn point. And that's just like ridiculous. And then you get people with the 21 stone beer bellies that are coming out playing them, and you're like, and the leagues just allow it to happen. And that makes it hard on referees, because then, you're getting mixed standards, and it's not fun to be involved at that.
The thing is, the standard, understanding people's levels and the standard is so important. Like, for example, I will say this on your podcast, I do let some handballs go, because these guys aren't professional footballers. If Virgil van Dijk is in the wrong position and gives away a penalty because his hand's out here, then you should be given that for sure. He's paid an incredible amount of money to to do that job. But Dave, who works part-time at Aldi and sort of just wants a bit of football just to kind of sort of while he's doing other things, I don't expect him to be in the right position, and I think that, also the handball thing is interesting because if you look at the top level, if we're using that as the marker, it becomes very problematic, because there are, as I said before, no situation is identical, but they are incredibly similar, and you do query how why one decision is given and the other isn't. But by the same token, that is what happened, and so we just have to accept that that's part of football. But, for example, did you know that handball, if the ball hits someone's hand, but the trajectory of the ball doesn't change, that's not a handball.
It's not a handball, yeah.
But, you try telling a bunch of, people who are angry that they've, for whatever reason, and they're 1-0 down, and, try telling them that. It's good luck. So it's tricky. It's incredibly tricky, I think.
So, a question then around that: when you're coached about, are you coached about what is and what isn't the handball rule at lower league levels? Are you told to forget what you're taught at the Premier League level and kind of?
That's the thing. Fundamentally, so there are 17 laws in football, right, which deal with everything from the pitch, the ball, the referees, the equipment, the players, goal kicks, free kicks, throw-ins, and the laws are exactly the same. And to be clear, this is one thing that you get. So football doesn't have any rules. It has laws. So there are 17 laws. Rules apply to competitions. So like a knockout competition. So for example, the World Cup, the rule of the World Cup will be that in the final stages, after 90 minutes, they'll play extra time, and then they'll have penalties. That will be in the rules of the competition. That's not in the laws of football. The laws of football are the same whether it's some 6-year-old playing on Saturday morning, or whether it's Lionel Messi playing in the World Cup final. They're exactly the same. Now, the rules might change depending on those age groups, because there are certain things that aren't observed. For example, at a lower level, with the children and stuff like that, you don't do offsides, for example. It's just an example. And obviously the size of the pitch varies, and the goals and that kind of thing. So there's no, if you like, there's no let up with the laws. The question is you've got to know your audience. Like I've done a lot of refereeing for the Bobby League, which is for players with disabilities, like learning difficulties, and they meet every. I think they have it across the country. Forgive me. I did the one which is sort of around Oxford area, and so you got players. And there's part of the sort of the community trust type elements of some of these professional clubs. And you had these guys, and there were sort of two levels, sort of two divisions. One of which is guys with more physical disabilities, and one with more sort of mental disabilities, and so I remember there's actually some terrific players there, but they're in some cases massively impeded by certain things. I mean, there was a guy there who had some kind of palsy, so he didn't have complete control of his arms. So absolutely not. I'm not giving any handballs because
naturally,
but then at the same time you're dealing with on a pitch with some guys with particular autistic qualities where they've obviously read the laws and they just could not get over the fact that I wasn't giving and you spend the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Like quizzing me about it, and I'd make so it's that kind of thing. But I mean, by the same token, I would say that these guys are far more mild-mannered and restrained than some of these people that I see on Saturday morning that supposedly are far better able.
Yeah, so let's talk about the differences then, because we're going to go into a few things. So in a minute, we'll talk about kind of like the respect boundaries that, we want to see referees enact in football and clubs as well. But let's start with the types of differences currently that are going on with different types of football. So you've touched on disability football and you've refereed junior football, like academy level football, adult football, be it at like step 6 at Hellenic level, or all the way down to grassroots. So what are the fundamental differences you see going into different arenas of football at the moment?
I mean, it really it's vast. I mean, like the academy.
So let's just go from, say, a youth team first of all. Do you have any not challenges, but do you have anything that is unique to each individual type of refereeing? So refereeing, well, the difference is with refereeing a youth game compared to a disability game, or refereeing a youth game compared to an adult game, and kind of the expectations. I hope that makes more sense.
I suppose the first thing to say is that regardless of any of these levels, the coaches are like one of the biggest things. Like if there's a coach who's screaming his head off at every single thing his team's doing, like berating his players on the pitch, etc., disagreeing with literally every single decision that I make against his team, you can be sure that the team is the same. They are, and that's regardless of whether they're under 11s or in their 40s. That it'll go across the whole thing. Academy teams that I've refereed for, where the players, some of them have been incredible. I mean, but the thing is, I know, well, having talked to like other people about some of these players, like genuinely fascinated as to why they're not playing in high, even higher levels than they are. It's their attitude so often, and it's the mindset, and that, again, that comes from the coaches, so often. So I would say that, like, knowing the coaches need to know where they're at, and I mean, Gary Lineker's talked about this. You've got some of these things. I mean, I had this person the other day, like, screaming at this kid for like the whole first. He was 11 years old, the whole first half, and you're like, Jesus, like. And I spoke to the coach about it. I said, I assume he's one of the parents, but like, it's really not good. And sure enough, this man went over to stand with the coaches, and at the end of the game, he goes, "Oh, ref, just it's all right because he's my son, so it's all right." It's like, well, you know what?
That's not right.
And I'm not going to argue with how you're parenting. I feel that's beyond my remit. But by the same token, don't belittle your son in front of his teammates and the opposition, and telling me that he needs to get tougher for next season. Well, we're only in October. Well, we were at the time. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, he's 11, and the thing is like, I mean, professional footballers, I think so. I saw it's less than 1% make it to that top level. I mean, and a lot of it,
a fraction of a percent. It's like a fraction of a percent.
And even then, it's not. It's sadly, as in so many things in life, it's not necessarily that you're like always the best player. You're just the better player in the right situation. So that
what's mad about that stat, Laurence, if I just cut in, is that it's only 0.5%, I believe, from what I was reading the other day, of British-born players, and then you've got to factor in that there's over 200 countries on the planet that all want to come to at the professional level. So you're cutting that fraction by about 180 after that. So you're talking about a percentile of a percent, and it's just, and that's even more crazy.
No, it's absolutely mad. And you know, I mean, I saw somebody talking. I can't remember what it was on. It was a professional coach for a championship team. I can't remember. Anyway, but he was saying that it's really important that parents and coaches don't try, and they've got to realise where they're coaching. You know, they've got to realise they are not coaching a Premier League team, or even a League Two team. You know, with a bunch of 16-year-olds. You know, and I think, you know, you said it, Rob, about enjoying their football. That has to be the number one thing. It has to be the number one thing. I mean, you know, you think about, I mean, everyone talks about, I mean, Spurs always come in for a lot of grief because of the limited number of silverware that they've won ever. But the thing is, I mean, that's kind of ridiculous because by comparison, they've won so much more than like so many clubs which have never won anything. You know, and you know, football is, you know, it doesn't stop, right? Like you win this season, you got to win next season. You know, you win the World Cup this time. 4 years later, we don't care. You got to do it again. And so if you're not enjoying that process as you know, grassroots, I think, you know, this is a big problem. And you see some of these coaches, the way they're screaming at their kids like they are trying to win the Champions League final. It's like, what are you doing? Like that boy is going to quit football, and it's going to be your fault, mate. And I it does my head in. I mean, going back to your question, Rob, like the other difference is, I mean, I think that I do a lot of refereeing for Laurel Park in Reading, and what with some of the kids there. There's some great stuff going on. They're really supportive environment, and that's, you know, that's really great to see that you know, because mistakes happen at the highest level, and so to acknowledge that, to not really kind of to make sure that the kids are having fun, and those skills will develop if they're keen. They'll develop, but making sure they're enjoying their football. And then when you get to those academy teams, I mean, obviously the standard is vastly superior. What I notice as a ref is there's a lot more, I'm going to say cheating. I'm going to say like shirt pulls, a lot more
gamesmanship. A lot more gamesmanship.
Well, yes,
kind of like,
say gamesmanship. Where does gamesmanship become like, you know, just cheating? Because I mean, like,
yeah,
you know, well, because I mean, what's his name? And Postagoli talked about this the other day, about the fact that every single manager on the planet is trying to find ways to bend the rules, to deceive the referee. And it's like, you know, we're talking about 22 players on the field that will do their utmost to basically con the referee, right? And that referee has got to try and find where it's being conned, where he's not being conned. You know, it's like, you know, players do dive, but, you know, heaven forbid you actually call it out. You know, it becomes, you know, I've seen things in games where, I mean, again, this is not unfamiliar to anybody, but, you know, when I've made a call about a foul and the players absolutely lose their minds as to like, you know, like that, how could I possibly, what, and a yellow card? What are you on, ref? You don't know what you're talking about. And literally, like 30 seconds later, they have cleaned someone out, and I've done from their team, and I've done the same thing, and they're, you know, they're kicking off, and it's like, you know, am I losing my? Am I
marbles?
What's going? You know, and I think again, but you say gamesmanship. That's all about, you know, is it trying to get into the ref's head? Maybe.
Now, I always interpret gamesmanship as the unwritten rules of football. We know you distinguish what the laws of football are. These are the unwritten rules of football. These are the kind of manipulations that. These are the kind of things that I mean, as a manager, I always talk to my team about game management all the time. We're largely a new bunch of players on our Saturday league. Some players are incredible. Some haven't played in a while. Some are bit parts. Some come in and out. Some are great but need guidance. So when you have all walks of life come together and you're playing teams that are largely drilled and I have to get them going, I constantly have to remind them of gamesmanship. If they're going to kick the ball out, kick it far. and that's the gamesmanship thing, because we play. But we play a home ground where we don't lose any football, but the pitch is just grass around us. And if you wanted to boot it, you could boot it 100 yards, 100 meters down the way. And the referees, we always think, never had the time on, and they're just going to let the player take 45 seconds to a minute to go get the ball again.
But again, to be clear about that though, Robert, because like getting the ball. But
is it cheating or gamesmanship? Because if you're winning 1-0 with 5 minutes to go, and the direct order is to get the ball out the penalty area, no fuss, no muss type of attitude, like Newcastle do that in the Premier League. They game manage every game. The ball's in play for 40 minutes.
So many teams do that, but I mean, of course, if you're winning, then it's cheating, and if you're losing, then it's gamesmanship, isn't it? Like, because you're like, it's. I mean,
so that's the distinction.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, football is built on the idea that you can't do that, and so, like, in terms of like getting the ball is all part of the game. So, for example, it's called. I mean, it's additional time. It was previously called injury time. That wouldn't form part of that additional time. Which is, but by the same token, again, these, like you say about these unwritten rules or whatever. Don't take the mick. Like, if the goalkeeper's taking forever to go and get the ball when his team's up and there's a few minutes left, I mean, as a referee, I would take that into account for sure.
Yeah, of course. But just as in life, sorry, go on. But just as in life, you've got, say, like the 10 Commandments that Christians and Protestants live by, they still bend the rules within that as well. So this is kind of like how people manipulate life as well. People do it on the football pitch all the time. But at the professional level, I will admit that at a grassroots level, it's quite rudimentary and basic. But when you get to the Premier League level, when you see players like Neymar play, and they are masters of the craft of gamesmanship and cheating, and they know how to win the exact foul at the exact time and the face to pull and the exact body motion to go down with to manipulate referees.
Well, exactly. And I mean, how many times have you seen players? Yeah. I mean, the thing is, actually, because they're not seasoned professionals, you don't get the kind of acting that you get at the top level in grassroots and Sunday League and stuff like that. The worst you see and what I ever see is somebody just throws themselves to the ground dramatically in the penalty box. Well, yeah,
that's it.
Sure.
There's maybe 2 or 3 things that you can do, and a good referee will deduce that almost immediately because their body will just go limp all of a sudden, arms up in the air.
Exactly. And you get kids trying to be smart. I mean, those things where you see a player sort of like with the smallest touch on the ankles. I mean, it might still be a foul, but then they're gripping their face. Like they've gone a million miles now. The thing is, it's still a foul. I mean, I see that. I see fouls like that sometimes, and players. And when I say it's like, well, it is a foul. You don't need to be so dramatic, but it's because it's acknowledging that. Because I think that it's in the same way that players were trying to emulate their heroes, like with the ball, they're trying to emulate their heroes with the all that nonsense you're talking about, and it's I mean, and then again, coming back to the referee, what chance has he got? Like, how is he? Like, he's meant to do all this stuff. You've got 22 people trying to do all this stuff, and then in amongst that, he's going to go, "That's a foul." It's like, no, you got that one wrong, ref. All the other ones,
Yeah, you got right. So we've established that coaching across the board, no matter the league or the division, there seems to be a rudimentary or like a persistent, not a problem, but there's consistencies with the ways that coaches are talking and communicating and acting. At academy levels, you tend to have a lot more of this cheating mentality gamesmanship. That's a strong word. The
standard is incredibly higher. It is incredibly high, and I mean the stakes are higher because we get we're playing in sort of proper stands, if you like. There's not usually a large crowd, but are they parents? Are they scouts? Who knows? These players don't. They're focusing on the game, but they want to make sure they do their utmost to win. A lot of these squads, they've got big squads. They want to make sure they're picked for the next game. You know what I mean? So there's all those kind of factors coming in. Football's ruthless. So who's to say if they don't perform in that game, are they going to be picked for the next game? Are they going to be dropped by the end of the season? Who knows? You know, I mean, I've got friends of mine who were in the academy system for, clubs. And at 16, they've been in the club for 5 years, and they're told without any notice, sorry, mate, you're done. I mean, to be fair, this is 20 years ago. I think that the system's much, much better now.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know, in terms of like the support and education and all that kind of thing, which is great to see. So, and they don't have this kind of severe drop off, because I've got friends of mine who have been coaches within academy setups and have left them because they just can't deal with these players who are not without talent, just being told, nope, see you later, with no notice. And it's harsh. And of course, this is why you get a lot of people who have kind of given everything to football, and they're left with nothing. And again, like I said, I don't think it's the case so much now, if at all, certainly in England. But it's difficult. So I don't want to say academy players are all cheats. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they're incredibly skillful. But you know, they're kind of, if you like, they're trying to master some of those sort of little things. I mean, you hear, I've heard, these stories about, when like Tony Adams and Martin Keown for Arsenal, when they, back in the day, and they used to do horrendously, like pinch the strikers, really like dig their nails in to the stuff that the referee would never be able to see. And you just kind of just really nasty, the whole time, to do everything they can put off.
What was it Vinnie Jones did? Didn't he stick a finger up somebody's bum or something? Or
probably. I mean,
when he's playing for Wimbledon, he used to be so good at those types of.
All those things that you just couldn't get away with it now. But is that? And of course, the thing is, this is why it's always interesting and potentially problematic when you get sort of older players, as in retired players, who played in, for example, very rough teams, or in an era which was a lot more physical than certainly it is now, sort of saying, "Oh, ref, I don't think you got that one right. I don't think you got that one right." It's like, well, yeah, maybe 25 years ago when you were playing, absolutely not. But we're talking about a situation where people literally just carve people's legs out, and you might not even get a free kick for it. And like two studs up was not an expression that you heard, because it was like, oh, he just tackled him.
Yeah. I mean, the standards have changed. Like when I grew up, I used to watch. My mum she didn't support Leeds, but she absolutely loved watching them. But said, just look at some of these tackles that they make. The Leeds team in the 1980s were incredibly talented on the ball, and off the ball, they were arguably even more talented, because what they used to get away with. And you mentioned Keown and Tony Adams; those two were But they knew how to get away with a tackle with a 2-footer. I mean, if the Premier League did VAR for a game in the 80s, I think the game would be down to 6 men by half an hour, and the game would be abandoned. Kind of like refereeing has to kind of like match those standards throughout the eras. And referees largely were more respected, like how rugby referees were respected as we went through. And then I think I believe so. Based on my granddad used to play up at Dundee United, or Dundee, one of the Dundee teams, when he was quite young, and he used to tell me about how referees were kind of no nonsense. Maybe it was a Scottish thing more than an English thing, but he said that there was a fear of getting on the bad side of a referee, because players could get away with largely anything they wanted to. So to get in the referee's bad books, you had to do something almost egregious to murder. So their standard was, okay, you can nearly kill somebody with a tackle, so that might get you a warning. Yeah, right. but God forbid you come up to me and say, your mum is this, and then get a yellow. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a big it's differences like with culture about what you can and can't say to referees. And nowadays, in Sunday League level, there are some referees that just don't want to be talked to. Any back chat, yellow card. And we've had that a few times for our teams. No nonsense behaviour. So again, I think culture changes with the times, and that's one specific example that I gave. But largely, I think that referees have more to deal with the now than what they did beforehand. Because again, here, I think maybe our minds are perceived a little bit because we have so much technology and footage available. And
this is the major thing. This is the major thing because they just. I mean, if you think about the amount of television that television dedicated to football 25 years ago, 20 years ago. Like, it's nothing. I mean, and you know, when I grew up without Sky or anything like that, I grew up with 4 and then 5 channels, you know, and that's, you know, and I had people I knew, like from school and stuff. Some of them had Sky, and that was a big deal and stuff like that. But you know, I didn't have any of that stuff. And even then, like, the football that was available was still limited compared to like now. And once the season starts, if you could watch football all day, every day, if you were so inclined.
Yeah.
And
I mean, how many? When you grew up, when you were younger, what did you have the capability to watch a full 90-minute match, or was it watching final highlights? I mean, FA Cup final, right?
Yeah, so I was born in '82, Rob. Right, so yeah. You know, like the FA Cup final was on TV, and I can't remember that there was. I just remember it was so weird. It was like there's some random evening that they had. I can't remember which game. I couldn't tell you which game it was, but it was like the. It was before the Premier League, but it was like the, you know, first division clubs, and I was like, "What's this doing on TV? How exciting!" And it was like Manchester United against someone or other, and I was like, because you just didn't see it, you never see it, you know, and of course, you know, it was the days when the replica kits in the shops were actually really dodgy replicas. They weren't like what you get now, which I think is not similar to and you know, so you saw the guys in the show. I just remember it's so exciting, yeah, because the FA Cup final, I think, and the World Cup. Course, like the you know, the international games. So you know.
I was leading somewhere with this. So when we were growing up in the 80s, and I was born in 91, so I come into existence and I started watching football when Sky got involved and they formed the Premier League, and we still largely had a similar experience. You would watch the occasional football, but largely it was watching condensed highlight packages where you didn't watch the full 90 minutes. So if there was a bad tackle that went over the that wasn't recognised, it wasn't in the highlights package, you know, out of sight, out of mind. Nowadays, you've got the tactical analysis to be able to watch every second of every game, to the point that football at a professional level, and I would even suggest all the way down to semi-pros, with clubs like clubs that have their own video cameras and can record everything, they micromanage everything. These facilities weren't available, and I feel like football's become a lot more perfectionist than what it used to be. So the referees, from my point of view, have to deal with the backlash of that, where there's an almost like certain standard that, because there's everything's out on footage, that the Arsenal Newcastle game, right, that was recently, where there was the free Anthony Gordon's goal that went in. There was the alleged 3 or 4 incidents building up to this decision. If this game was to happen in, say, the 80s or the 90s, life would have moved on within a day, because largely 99% of the population wouldn't have seen the game live. Typically, let's say the game wasn't even televised, you would have had one match of the day camera crew there. That's it, done. They filmed the game, but 3 minutes of it on TV. And the only 3 minutes they're going to put in are the goals and some of the chances, because it's a tight boundary that they need to put in 10 or 20 games, right? And the divisions were bigger back in the 80s, weren't they? 24 teams. So, you know, so you can't have this level of scrutiny, and people largely moved on. And I mean, I've done a lot of research and looked into if referees were scrutinised as much as they were in the 80s compared to the 90s. And I think the biggest example was obviously the hand of God. The fact that, was the referee either corrupt or did he just not see it? And and again, that's still a thing today, because obviously, you know, it's impacting us as an English person, of course. But but nowadays, there's one every other day. We're in the week where it's only Wednesday, and on Monday you had Fulham and Wolves play, and Gary O'Neill at Wolves has gone ballistic over their 2 penalty awards that were given. And, you know, one of them was where Semedo's nicked the ball away, and he said, how on earth is that a penalty? The second one is, God, I can't remember, like a little note. Oh, it's he's gone over the ball and he's put a leg out, and you're thinking, is it enough to go down? And then there was the red card incident where Vinicius and one of the Wolves, Kilman, go nose to nose, and Vinicius goes into it, and you're thinking, if Kilman goes down, Vinicius might get sent off. And then on the Tuesday, you've got Newcastle. On this, a month ago, you had Luis Diaz a month before that, you've got, and then 10 years ago, I just feel like the amount of incidents naturally has ramped up because of the way that not only do the media sensationalize all of it, but also because it's just easy access. Even a club like my own, we've got the ability to pause on a freeze frame when there's an offside call. And I constantly get asked, oh, was he offside? Was he offside? And we play some Sunday League teams that have dodgy linesmen that are just told, put the flag up, put the flag up, put the flag up. Yeah. And then at the end of every game, I go back and I look at the footage and I'm like, okay, let's just see what was going on here.
Yeah.
And I can actually freeze frame the exact point. So even amateur clubs now can do this. And we've got all of this access to this technology. And I just feel like this is kind of where football's kind of gone, and this didn't happen beforehand. You would have debate about it, but not to this extent where you've got 30-minute videos and then TalkSport and Simon Jordan trying to defend some aspect of VAR or the processes, or and VAR complicated things a lot when it come in big time because of the fact that you're relying on people that aren't trained to use these systems that are coming in on day one.
I think the technology can only be as good as the people using it, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
With anything, and so so it does do my head. I mean, my opinion on it is like, if people say, "Oh, I can't stand VAR," like, well, VAR is not your issue. It's the way it's being implemented, and the fact is, I'm definitely not alone here. I just remember, like, every week, like Match of the Day or In Matches or whatever it was, like, them taking apart these refereeing decisions. I mean, not with VAR technology, just with replay technology, going, well, he's got that wrong, he's got that wrong, then we need to sort it out, like, because it's not good enough. And then obviously the criticism now is that referees aren't making decisions because they're worried because of VAR, and VAR will step in to make some of those bigger calls. And I think that it's I mean, relatively speaking, if you think about the history, how long football's been going on, VAR is still in its infancy, and we're still getting to grips with it. And Howard Webb, who was crucial to bringing it in, he was in America and he's come back in now, and he's talking about not refereeing games. And the thing is, again, Rob, this is the thing at the top level. This is the top level, and these players that I deal with. Like you said, they got VO, but obviously that's more of an educational thing. Hopefully, just like to review the games or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And for me, this obviously goes over their heads, and I don't bother saying it. But if you want a perfect refereeing performance, then I would expect to see a perfect footballing performance. I don't want to see one missed pass. I don't want to see one shot that's not on target. I don't want to see, you know what I mean? And if you can give me that, then you absolutely deserve to have a perfect, flawless, absolutely inscrutable refereeing performance. But I tell you what, there is not a game on the planet, thankfully, I might add, where such things happen. Because, I mean, people are flawed. The best players in the world make mistakes. Ronaldo, Messi, these top guys miss goals from 2 feet away, and I think the game's better for it. Because that's what if we knew. If I was certain that every single game is going to work out in the way that it does, then it becomes very uninteresting, doesn't it? It's like,
oh, big time, yeah. Imagine if robots were just controlling it and made these automated decisions. You mentioned about Hawkeye being the best thing because it's crystal clear, easy, and it's just one buzz on the watch of a referee, and that's it, done. It's a goal. They're largely going to introduce, I think, they're going to do it for the lines on the pitch now. And again, the Newcastle-Arsenal game, the amount of freeze frames over the ball, if the ball went out of play. Yeah. And this happened when Marcus Rashford played, and there was the Man United's goal wasn't given, Newcastle's was. And now it looks like Hawkeye is going to be a pitch thing, so it's going to basically outline the whole pitch. They're going to bring in the semi-automated offside as well, where you've got the UEFA lines where they just go, okay, there's his knee, he's off, and we're just supposed to trust the robots. IFAB, the board, are also considering, should VAR now get involved with normal free kicks, normal corners, normal throw-ins, and like
this is the problem, isn't it?
And then at that point, as a referee, hearing that type of stuff. Before we move on, what do you make about hearing about stuff like that? Because if you were let's say you were a Premier League referee and you were told, okay, you're basically going to be just on the pitch. You're not going to make any decisions. You're going to let robots. You're going to let robots call if it's gone over the line. You don't need linesmen anymore because they're going to do the offsides for you. And the only thing we really need is a fourth official to make the subs and somebody on the middle of the pitch. Well, you don't even need that. An automated whistle sound in the stadium that goes off and everything.
That's not the only thing the fourth official does, Rob. The fourth official makes notes of every single thing that happens.
Of course he does. But this is me trivializing what a fourth official would be doing with robots and AI. So an AI, don't forget, an AI would make these notes in these situations. AIs and robots would do all of this. They would do all the admin. A fourth official would just, you could even cut out a little robot, like what they do with the balls at the football stadiums where they got a car sponsor, they wheel the balls out on the cars. I mean, again, what this is, I think, where we're heading with professional refereeing. It's going to be automated, and we're going to be left with, that's the way we're talking like heavy in the future, but the future's coming around quick with Hawkeye. That's not been in too long. VAR's come in 8 years later. What would you do if you were in that level 1 category? And you were refereeing internationally and abroad and domestically in Europe or Asia, wherever you're situated, and then you're told basically that every decision that you're going to have is going to be scrutinized by 2 or 3 other people, and there's going to be more delays to games and more this. I mean, but so it's more of like a control thing as a referee.
Yeah, I get that. So, first of all, I'm not sure I can particularly relate to the exact situation you're talking about. I'm quite far off that.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, in terms of like all my decisions being scrutinised by 2 or 3 people, well, I have all my decisions scrutinised by about 40 people every, the whole game. That's a foul. That's not a foul. That's a throw in that way. That's a throw in that way. That's a corner. That's not a corner. That's a goal kick. That's not a goal kick. That's a yellow card. That's not yellow. I sort of joke with the players sometimes, depending on my mood, like, if you disagree with me, boys, I guarantee I've got 11 people that will agree with me. So can we just go with that? And that's so in terms of that scrutiny, I don't think that's any different. But
okay.
Not really. But I think, but basically, what you're talking about is the referee becoming obsolete because. But then first of all, okay, so let's just think about it practically. So first of all, you're talking about the highest level because obviously it would be an incredible
so where referees want to get to,
it'd be an incredible amount of money. So that's for all this technology. So you'd still need referees going right up through the pyramid. So there'd still be referees required. But I think that as with so many things, if there's no dream, if there's no goal, there's nothing to work towards, then I think that people become less enthusiastic about it. So, why do these young players want to play football? Well, hopefully the main thing is because they just love playing football. But I think especially young ages, it's because maybe I might get picked up. Jamie Vardy got picked up when he was like 54. That's a joke. It could happen for me, guys. So that aspirational thing. So as a referee, if you're taking it seriously and you know that actually past a certain level, you're going to become, not a very relevant thing. I think that becomes a problem. I think that do we lose an element of the game? I think the thing is I think that conversation that happens between teammates, between friends, whatever it is, after a football match or any sporting event, actually, where there is that element of potential human error, I think that's actually a key part of the game. I think that, for me, that's not a foul. And I think that, that what I'd like to see in the teams that I referee and at all levels, a little bit more acceptance that stuff happens. And you can't account for it. And your opinion is no less valid than my opinion. Well, I don't think it is, ref. Well, okay, that's great. I do. And that's what you're going to have to run with. And it's like, because the thing is what you get, especially with coaches and what I see from spectators, is I get people saying, "Oh, ref, it's an absolute joke." Well, what is that? It's like, no, like you think that and I think this and that's all there is to it. But basically they're saying, well, no, I'm right and you're wrong. It's like, well, I could do that, couldn't I? But I'm not going to become that petty, hopefully. But it's, I think we need that debate, And I think that, personally, I like to think I've not made in my kind of relatively sort of short, nearly 2 years, but a lot of games, but, of doing refereeing, I've never made a call that is so outlandish that it's completely destroyed the game. And I think that, referees have done that. For example, just to put that in, let's put that in context, like that Liverpool-Tottenham game, obviously a massive muck up there with the VAR guys, complete breakdown in communication. Personally, and Liverpool fans will not thank me for this, I don't think that changes the game. I don't think that a referee, unless they are genuinely incompetent and consistently giving big decisions, I'm talking about penalty kicks, denying goals, those kinds of, unless they're consistently doing that through a match, I think that the team who deserve to win on the day wins on the day, or not, or draws or whatever it is. I really believe that, and for me personally, I don't have an opinion about who wins or loses the games I play in. I referee in. I feel like I've done a good job if by the end of 90 minutes or however long the game is, depending on the age group, if I feel the team that it makes sense. Like, for example, you can have the better team just like missing all their chances and the weaker team taking advantage of that one chance they had, and they win 1-0, and they absolutely, on paper, should not be winning. But the fact is, they took advantage of their one chance, and the better team didn't. So, yes, it's the correct result, although it doesn't look like it. Do you know what I mean? They shouldn't have won. They were all over.
I watched Newcastle play PSG last night, so yeah, I understand that. For 96 minutes, yeah, of course, yeah.
I think a referee can feel really comfortable in their own skin if they're managing the game. And I think because it is that question of managing the game. I'm not going to put up with you calling me X, Y, and Z. Absolutely not. I'm not going to put up with you badgering me. I'm not, and making it very clear to both teams. And I think the problem is, of course, that, oh, you didn't do that for that guy, ref. You didn't do that. It was like, yeah, well, I'm doing my best here, mate, but I'm trying to manage 22. How many people do you manage at work, if any? Like, I'm trying to keep 22 people happy here. And the thing is, there are some times when, in a particular part, what was I going to say? Yeah, I've seen Howard Webb talking about this. This is years ago, but like yellow cards, for example, like cautions. So the definition of a yellow card is for for a foul anyway is a reckless challenge. Like a careless challenge is where you get a free kick. Reckless and excessive force is when a red card will be issued. Now, what does careless mean to you? What does reckless mean to you? There are, obviously you can look online for videos of examples of where a yellow card has been given, but this is where we enter into debate. Now, early on, I was talking to a referee on the weekend, actually, who refereed a game, and one of the players came, "Oh, ref, I can't believe you gave that yellow card in the first, 10 minutes, and you sin-binned that guy in the first 15. What's that all about?" I said, well, as a result of that, there were no other cautions for the rest of the game. And so maybe that yellow card might seem a little bit harsh. Personally, that's yellow cards for fouls are something that I'm really working on. I've done a load of research, like looking at footage to really see, because the thing is, I think there's nothing wrong with being tough. I think is the problem, especially at an amateur level, when they haven't got necessarily the ball skills. They've taken the word intent out of the laws of football, which is right, because I don't know what you're thinking, but I know what it looks like. If you're not looking at the ball and you're just looking at that guy's legs, and there's no way you're going to get there to get the ball, and then you go in for a tackle, well, that's a yellow card for me, because you've just going for the man. And if you're not aware that you're not going to get there quick enough, well, that's on you. And again, that awareness thing. You can see countless footage of when I've refereed games where players will say, "Oh, ref, I couldn't do anything about it." Well, you could, because you're the one who's running. You're the one who ran in there. The fact you couldn't stop yourself is not that player's fault who you have crashed into. You are responsible for your actions. And I think that, understanding that, when the ground's slippery, so I just ended up well, yeah, again, we knew that. We knew the ground was wet at the beginning, and it's still raining now. So, like, again, and again, I mean, what do I do as a ref? Well, what's interesting is that younger age groups, I would always have a little chat with the players, and that conversation has changed massively over the time. And then what I find at the older level and the academy level is that conversation doesn't happen, because I suppose there's an expectation that we're going to treat the referees with respect, which actually, to be fair, is the case in my experience at that level, the academy level. And they understand that there are laws that they have to kind of play within. So it's tricky.
So with Grassroots, then let's stick with my level, just because we've talked about kind of a lot of expectations, a lot of experiences. As a referee, what would you want to set as standards for you? We mentioned earlier that for you to have the best refereeing game ever, or to be on par with these clubs that think that they expect this from you, this high bar, what would you want to set as a expectation for clubs? I'll give some examples. So, and just so that you can kind of have an idea. So, for example, standards that we're told about as clubs are that you've got to respect supporters, spectators, parents, players. You're kind of like a guardian for anyone involved at your club, and also you're supposed to make sure that you don't come across like a complete and utter arse to other people, right? So you've got to have respect for your opponents, your referees, and you're supposed to do your admin. You're supposed to say to the referee, give him the details. If you have a clubhouse, ask him to the clubhouse. And then on the game, when the referee turns up, go over, shake his hand, ask him if he needs anything, be polite with him, be cordial with him. So these type of like expectations or kind of like realities, what would you want to see as a referee in an ideal world? We're talking here about the biggest ideal that you could kind of, with a view to like implement across football. So for example, if the FA said, okay, these are the new rules that we're going to have to give to protect referees. So that includes clubs can be marked down if they don't shake a referee's hand before and after a game. So stuff like this. Like, what would you want to see but in place, or kind of like an ideal standard that people at my level should be striving for? Because we have talked a lot about clubs, because clubs and players largely don't know the rules a lot of the time. And I was going to mention just before we go into that, I'm on a bit of a tangent now. So with clubs, it's reactionary, and this kind of like feeds into like the refereeing. We typically, when something comes up, it's dealt with after the fact. It's never, in my experience, because everybody's on a learning curve. I'm always on a learning curve, and sometimes when referees don't show up, or we need to put in a referee report, or you have to go away and consult the rules, the handbook that the leagues provide. You have to contact the county FA sometimes, but it's all reactionary. I don't think I've met many coaches that go into a game knowing, okay, this is what's going to happen if this incident happens, or if this happens. It's always, we'll just have to see after the game. So it kind of leads credence to the fact that a lot of clubs and individuals aren't particularly too savvy with the rules. And I mean, I'm in that boat sometimes as well, because on a game day, coaches and managers and volunteers at my level are typically running around doing 1,000 things. And sometimes our head is preoccupied, say, with this small little box, and the refereeing stuff that comes into the game is outside of our sphere. It's outside of our understanding on the day, because usually we're dealing with our own thing, and there's a lot to compute with, like day-to-day management on a game day, right? So when it comes to referees, sometimes it goes over my head, and when an incident happens, or like, for example, when a player kicks a ball away now, it still hasn't quite hit that you're going to get booked sometimes if the referee is like that. And there's just stuff in the games that we go, and usually there's a case of we go away after the game and review it, and we look at the rules because we just don't know them. And I think that's a commonplace thing at our level in particular, and it's always reactionary. So that's why when players foul and they say, oh, that's not a foul, it's because typically the rule of thumb is they're either just protecting their own bacon or they just genuinely don't know what the rule is. It applies to coaches and managers as well. So back to the point, this kind of like rounds it back in. So with all of that in mind, what would you put in place for me and every other club, or kind of, I know that I'm putting the world of responsibility on your shoulders here to put some type of precedent on clubs. Yeah, but what would you want to see involved to help your life as a referee and others as well, to make sure that referees are not only a protected species, but an involved species in football as well, and not somebody that feels like they're being pushed away. And like what you said at the beginning, where, we don't really want you there. How would you want to bridge this gap?
Well, before the robots take over, I think that there's a load of things. I mean, we're talking about whole culture. We're talking about culture. We're talking about thousands and thousands of people in the stands, singing X, Y, and Z about the referee, and there's a whole history about that. Who's wrong? The referee is. That's the culture, and it's like, and there's all those chants. I'm not going to repeat them for your show, Rob, but it's that's the thing, and players will joke about, I said they got the 12th man there. I mean, the 12th man is the stand, but I've heard in reference to the referee being like an extra player because of the decisions they're making. But I mean, so. Just before I answer your question properly, I would say that it is kind of answering your question, but teams have got to realise where they sit. And you're talking about that. I'm not talking about level in terms of grassroots, whatever it is. They've got to realise where they sit in the context of that match. If Luton Town plays Manchester City, right? They're gonna struggle, but no one's gonna be surprised if they struggle, and they'll get compliments if they don't. On the flip side, Manchester City will get criticism if they don't take them apart, right? So what I see is teams have got, and the thing is, and of course it's problematic because of course what all the teams that you see on television have is that you can see them on television, so you can see their previous game, you can see what they're doing, that player, you see them playing for there, you play, in a grassroots fixture like where your team plays, you haven't got that luxury. You don't know who you're playing, so you don't know. I mean, maybe you see their points in the league or whatever it is, perhaps, but even that might not necessarily be a good indication of how good the team is. They could have won 5 games, but just won it by 1 goal, and the teams they were playing were all suffering with injuries or whatever it is. So
yeah. Rule of thumb with that, mate, is typically I don't look into it too much because grassroots teams change so dramatically each week. Availability, injuries.
That's it.
That's it. So you don't look too far ahead. You look at the fixtures and you look at the table and go, oh, this might be a good game. But there's always the caveat of you never really know. You go in with the best intentions, but you never really know.
The point of my one of many two longer rants, Rob, was that if you think that you're on the same level as these teams that you're playing at, and then suddenly they're winning 3-0, and the referee's calling up foul after foul after foul against you, and then your first thought is, well, the referee is he's biased. He hasn't got a clue. We're losing. It's got nothing to do with the fact we can't defend. Nothing to do with the fact that we don't know where our players are playing. It's nothing to do with the fact that we can't convert the opportunities. Nothing to do with that, obviously. It's everything to do with the fact the referee gave that free kick in the first 5 minutes against us, and from then it's just been downhill. And understand, and why is it that the other team hasn't had a load of fouls called up? Well, because they're better players than you are, and you're just lazy or clumsy with your tackles because they're better players than you are. And I might add, there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to, that's why I say you need to know the level you're at and accept it. And for example, if I was coaching a team where I'm clearly my team is clearly struggling, back off. Don't go lunging into challenges where your chances clearly are not working out well for you. Back off, play that deep line and make it difficult in a different way, rather than sort of lunging in like you might do it against a team that is more on your level, where it is more of a 50-50, so I would say be aware of that. And the thing is, this is where I think good coaches can really influence the play, because it's like, but you have that conversation before, right, boys, let's see where we're at with this team. All right. And I mean, how many times have I seen players, going at me? I mean, you see it on the television as well, but not, especially at Grassroots, like where they're going at me, and then before you know it, the other team scored a goal. If you spent as much time berating, like much time on football as you did berating me, like you might have saved that last goal. Like maybe focus in on the football and stop like blaming all your problems on this guy who is again, all these players are trying to do their best, right? They're all trying to do their best.
Yeah, of course.
Referee, unless he's corrupt, and forgive me, at my level, I'm not getting paid enough to be corrupt, right? Like I want to see a good game of football. All right. I want to see. I don't want to see. I don't want to see cheat. I don't want to see pushes in the back. I don't want to see players like looking as though they really want to hurt people. These guys are not professional footballers. They probably got work on Monday. I'm not interested in it. Like, so show me some good football, boys. You're not playing at Old Trafford here. The pitches are all bumpy. We're gonna work together on that one, and I'm gonna try and help you make sure you can play the best football you can. If you berate me for that, or you start saying that horrific challenge you just did is like barely touched him, ref, then we're gonna fall out. And I try. I look at these images of like Kalina, like screaming at these players, to back off. And we live in this sort of culture now where you can't do that kind of thing. And, when I do get stressed sometimes because I'm trying to do my best. I'm getting it from both angles, and I even get players going, "Oh, ref, you look pretty stressed." Well, I think you would too, mate. If you had 22 people screaming at you, then you got it wrong. And it's just trying to keep that together. So I suppose have that conversation with your players. And yeah, it might not go your way, but the thing is, what I do know is that people are in control. They've driven to the game. They've got their kit together most of the time. That some of them have even got children that they've been given responsibility for, so they can obviously look after themselves. Why does all that go out the window when they step onto a football pitch where they can just basically behave exactly as they want and, heaven forbid, anyone question their football prowess and the fact that maybe they're a little bit late to the challenge, and I think kind of getting that as a principle is really important. I think that, there are not that many laws in football, relatively speaking. I mean, if you break it down, there's a lot of kind of, some of some of the small print gets into sort of some fine detail, but learn it. Like, why not? It's not complicated. And when I had a parent the other day going, "Well, I've never heard of that rule, ref," and I was like, "Well, okay, well, so what are we saying? Because you haven't heard of it, it doesn't exist? That's not how things work." I even saw an interview, this is a couple of years ago now, maybe 3, Theo Walcott was being interviewed after a game, it was regarding something that had happened, and he said, "Oh, I don't even know what the law is there. Should that have been a free kick? I don't even know." He's a very well paid, very well retired now, very well paid, respected footballer. He doesn't know the law. So, spend a couple of minutes, do a little quiz on it, talk about it in the pub. And I think it would massively help the referees to if they really knew some of these laws.
So, for example, I've just Googled the 17 laws of the game. And yes. If you were to have a pub quiz and have all of your football team in the pub of pub quiz, God, I can't speak English at the moment, and you basically tell them, name all 17 and everything, and if you don't, you got to down your drink type of thing. Right. They're all really basic, but I don't think people would get all I don't think people would get all 17. We're talking because there's just a lot to... Yeah, it's almost for certain. So field of play, the ball, numbers of players equipment, the referee, the assistant ref, duration, start and restart of play, ball in and out, methods of scoring, offside, fouls and misconduct, free kicks, penalties, throw-ins, goal kicks, corners. I guarantee you half of that will just fly over people's heads. And we're talking here about the basic tenets of football.
This is the other thing, Rob, because players will happily stop the game, berate the referee, scream at him, and the minute he tries to say anything, it's like, "Oh, ref, let's just get on with the game, shall we? Let's just get on with the game." It's like hang on. Like, because they're not interested. Fundamentally, they're not interested. They want to play. Like I said to you right at the beginning, it's the playground. Give me the ball. I want to score. All right, that's it. I want to score, and I want my team to win. And if that doesn't happen, I need to look for someone to blame. It's definitely not me. I'm amazing. Everyone else, it's just. I think, especially at the lower level, these guys who are refereeing are there because they love the game, because they want to do it. They're not there because they're bored. There's a lot of other things you could do if you're bored, if you want something to do, which does involve having grown men shower you. I think that they want to be there because they, for the most part, and I'd love to speak to someone that doesn't like football and referees. But there's a lot of things. I mean, so going back to your question, the other thing I would think is be aware of who the referee is. Like I said, I've done a lot of games. I feel very confident. The first men's game I did was after having done a lot of youth games. The older ones being like under 16s, right? That's the oldest age group I'd done, and then and I'd sort of got used to the fact that. Like, for example, the way I did offsides then, I mean, you'd have a linesman, but the way I would do it is I would, I'm the referee, I need to be in charge, and I need, if I thought it was offside, then this is what I used to do. I would then look at the linesman. If the linesman then agreed with my my decision, then I'd go with offside. Otherwise, I wouldn't. So at youth level. And then, of course, I tried to adopt the same. And I wasn't used to using the whistle a lot because the younger kids, 12, 13, 14, I would stop playing and then they'd listen to me. So, if I needed to, there are bits where you need to blow the whistle to stop the play for a foul or whatever it is, but there's lots of bits where you don't need to do that because the kids will just hear you. Men do not. They will keep going like a horse that will keep going until it drops dead. So that first men's game, I'm happy to say I was broken after it. It was absolutely horrendous. Both teams ended up being appalling. They were both, I won't say who they were both appalling. And by the end of it, I had one of the coaches saying horrific things to me. In a case, it ended up. I think it was a draw. I can't remember the exact score. It was either 1-1 or 2-2. It was a draw, and because I tried to adopt these same principles that I'd had at the youth level, which had worked just fine. I'd had a lot of compliments from parents and stuff saying that. And this, I had by the end of it, I had pretty much every single player calling me everything under the sun. It just turned a complete farrago. And hilariously, I look back at it now, I gave one player a yellow card because he kicked the ball away. And this is in the 85th minute. And it just looked like, it was just nothing. It was so, and so I walked away from that game that was horrible. People are horrible. I'm not sure whether I can do that again. But then it's funny because while I would maintain that those teens were not pleasant and shouldn't behave like that, I had allowed it as the referee. I had allowed them to do whatever it was, continue with everything. I was still kind of becoming more familiar with the laws myself. Like I said, it's the first men's game I'd done, and so. I don't want to say I blame myself, but certainly I think that in terms of managing the match, I did not do that. I did not manage the match. So actually, when not for your show, Robert, when this manager's calling me certain things right at the end of the game, it was kind of, although in and of itself it's horrendous, but it was kind of in the context of the match, it kind of was just all part of that picture. And I think as a referee, your responsibility is to not let that happen. Now, why am I saying that? Sorry. Well, I've learned a lot from that, and I like to think that now I can manage games really well. But what those players need to have been aware of, and I think all teams need to be aware of, is who their referee is. And, some of these guys are young. like super young. Like, you know, I'm not as young as I once was, but I like to think that I can take a bit of stick. And I was broken after that game. But some of these kids at 18, 19, you know, 18 years old, you can referee men's games. I mean, you know, and you know, you know, you get a lot of referees who they love football. Maybe they struggled to play for whatever reason, like not through injury, just wasn't. But they like the kind of very kind of thought out and like, these are the laws. I'm going to learn those laws and I'm going to make sure that the players follow those laws. And of course, you need a bit of flexibility. And I think that, you know, young referees, I think they need to be more aware of that. It's not like, you know, I've heard games where, you know, these younger referees are sticklers for the rules and you end up with like 11 yellow cards. And it's like,
yeah,
I'm not sure.
We've had that type of game before,
you know,
but the referee was lovely. Yeah.
You know, when you start getting to those kind of numbers of yellow cards, I would say the yellow cards start to become, they start to not really hold any weight, you know. No, because you've read the law, you've read the that's what we're going to do, and I think that there's first of all, but understand where the referees come from. So if you've got some young referee who's clearly just sort of learning it, clearly is not used to maybe being around. So I mean, you know, football is wonderful, but it does bring in all kinds of people from all kinds of places, all kinds of backgrounds, and some of these kids are just not used to those kinds of people, and you've got to understand that, and you've got to understand that you going, "Oh, mate, what are you talking about?" Like that, you know, I saw someone get a sin bin. I saw someone get a sin bin for that from a younger ref the other day. Right now, for me, I don't think that's dissent. I think that's some guy asking a question. I don't think he's insulting you. I don't think he's berating your decision. He's asking a question. Now, he's asked it in quite an aggressive way, for sure, but. You know, I think that we need to sort of understand that. And the thing is, a younger ref, I don't necessarily expect them to, but I think the players, especially if they're older, you're saying about, Rob, about your team, how it's mixed up of, you know, new players, younger players, players have been around for a long time. You know, there's kind of elder statesmen, if you like, you know, the more experienced players I think it's a responsibility to like, look after grassroots football across the whole, you know, let's look after these referees. This referee could be great, but he might not want to ever do it again if you spend 90 minutes telling him he's rubbish at his job. You know, like, why would you? You know, and I think I think that's a conversation that needs to happen. But by the same token, if you've got an experienced referee, I would say that you know, they won't do that because they know they won't get away with it. So which kind of just shows they know who they're dealing with. Right, this referee's young, he's an experienced wicked. We are going to get every single free kick going here. You know, and I don't think you're talking about those gamesmanship. Some people might call it gamesmanship. I just think that's just being a bit of a, you know.
Yeah. So with younger referees, I've kind of noticed a theme on refs. They don't typically, nowadays referees have to go through the county FA, and county FAs seem to be so reluctant to pass younger referees down to grassroots teams at my level for exactly the reasons that you've just said. They don't want to put them in the firing line. So what they'll typically do is stick them as assistant referees in academy or Hellenic games where they know they're not going to get as much abuse and they can mitigate any type of abuse so that they can build up. The Sunday League in Reading, I don't know how much you've refereed in that particular league or Sunday League in general. I always find that they're older referees, like 50s, 60s. They in the Reading League, there's a few, you know, spring chickens, but largely there's a few old hens in the hen house in the Reading Sunday League, and I've had one younger referee in about 4 years, and he's a lovely referee, Sam Palmer. He won an award, a county FA award recently for being a good referee, and we lost a game where he refereed, and we conceded a penalty, and it was a clear penalty, and a couple of the centre-backs had come up to him in that moment and said, he's clearly looked for the dive ref, and he's held his own, and I honestly, as soon as he held his own, even though I was managing and I was on the pitch at the time, I said, fair play. I said literally fair play to him. He's literally told my big 6'3" bodybuilder to basically piss off and everything. And I love that. I absolutely thought that is great, but you never see enough of them at this level, which is probably why the County FA are aware of this. Yeah,
that's great to hear.
I think the County FA are aware. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, on Sundays I tend to referee just one team, a couple of teams. Yeah, mainly one team for their home games. I mean, they book me directly. I know a lot of the games are sorted out through the FA, aren't they? So I'm not sure the arrangement for that. But I mean, I think it's for the reasons you say. I think they won't be putting in. I mean, why would they? Why would they? I mean, I think there's an element because I mean, at 18 years old, you're very young, and to be met with like some tattooed like guy who's like gonna like have you if you muck around. No way. And things. I mean,
imagine if we were both 18, would you want to go through that? If we were both 18, would we want to go through that experience doing these Sunday league games? Yeah.
I can't possibly say, but I think that, but you need to build them up for it. But the thing is, like, are they doing? Because they're so close. You think about so what's the 18 years old like doing a 16-year-old's game, right? If you imagine, like that's very close in age. I mean, obviously, obviously, the older you get, you are going to end up being the sort of similar age to the players, but with that experience. But like an 18-year-old ref, it depends. I mean, the thing is, what's great is you do get a lot of referees who start when they're 14. And so by the time they're 18, you have 4 years of experience. But of course, the thing is, they're only going to be reffing, juniors, like, under 8s, under 9s, under 10s, and the whole thing changes. And like I said to you, that men's game that I had was like baptism of fire. And I had not personally, while I might have seen something similar, to actually be in the middle of that, it changed my whole way of refereeing for the better. And I am a better referee for that match. But I had to have that match, sadly, in order to progress. And I wouldn't want to put any kids through that,
oh God, no.
Yeah, but so how do you do it? I'm not entirely sure. But I think that because the thing is, being an assistant referee is, first of all, it's a different job, and it's a specific job. At that level, and then to say, well, they've done assistant refereeing a couple of times, now they'll be all right for the middle. I would disagree. I think what you do is you do under 18s games. I think you do that kind of thing. Maybe do. I used to do a lot of like power league, like 5-a-side stuff. Maybe do that. Because it's a very frustrating experience as a referee, because you tend to just be on one side of the pitch and the players cannot get their head around the fact that you can't see the exact thing that's happening on the other side of the pitch. But you are dealing with men there, or women. But in my case, it was men, but in a kind of small thing. So maybe that might be a good way for younger referees to kind of introduce themselves to adult football. And I mean, we're having this conversation based on the precept that men are horrible people. But the thing is,
yeah, it's not the case.
Obviously, it's not always the case. But and of course, the joke, of course, is when I've had a player go at me for like 90 minutes, and at the end, cheers, ref, really good game there. It's like, where were you for the last 90 minutes? Do you know what I mean? It's sort of. But again, that's what I say. It's all part of the culture. It's all part of the culture, and I think, it's difficult, because I think that footballing culture, the one that discusses the decision, like getting rid of the robots and the AI and all that, I think that's really important. But it does mean that you're going to upset some people because you've given the wrong decision. There are horrific stories of people who have got, in Brazil, not so long ago, a referee was kidnapped and beheaded because he gave a penalty to the wrong team.
That team in Brazil, Grêmio, their whole team ran up to the VAR booth in the stadium and was trying to kick the doors down to try to get in, because this Grêmio player made a horrible red card tackle. We're talking 2 feet off the ground, like this far off the ground. He's just killed this guy with a tackle, and he got a red card. And I was like, they've run up to the referee's VAR. In Brazil, they do it differently, and in South America, they take the whole assistant team, the VAR, and the main. Like the 4 officials, they take them all to the same stadium, and they've got VAR rooms because it's not like in England. We just send everybody to Stockley Park, right? Because Birmingham, where it's based.
Otherwise, you'd have a lot of people who are convicted of murder. You see, Rob, that's why they do that in England.
So we've basically got all of our VAR assistants penned away in some type of like maximum security place.
Fences,
but
armed gunmen,
fences, armed gunmen. But also, English people aren't that devout to violence that we'd want to go out and. I mean, right now it's mid-November. I mean, I'm only speaking to my own experiences, but I'm quite cold. I wouldn't want to leave the house after that. I'd be mad on Twitter, but I wouldn't be. There's a different social thing. But in Brazil, in South America, they take all the people to the stadiums with them. So the VAR crew go out with the main crew, and it just leads to people banging on the VAR door mid-game, and the president of this Grêmio team is bashing on the door saying, "Get out! Explain yourself." And obviously, he's doing it in Portuguese, but oh my God, it's just unreal. But yeah, all of these, what we've been talking about, are like kind of. I always think about learning curves and development and how to mitigate a lot of these things. The one thing that I always appreciate when a referee turns up before a game is, I think it's key when he speaks to the players before a game. Far too often I have referees that are late and they don't speak to us. They just come up and speak to me, ask for a team sheet, and then they go to the halfway line and call the captains over.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm not
like
a big. Now, what I would what I always think sets the tone for a good refereeing performance is when he comes over and says, "Look, I'm this, and this. I might get this wrong, but I'm not going to tolerate this, and this." And I think that goes a whole hell of a way to ensuring that games calm down from minute one. And if he doesn't like something in the first 5 minutes, or if teams are getting busted, like I mentioned that we played a team Southcote where he's had to get involved with their management team and their spectators because they're losing and they're losing their heads and they're screaming and shouting. And again, it's just a moment of football. They're nice people that have just lost it in the moment. And the referee beforehand spoke to both teams and said, "I'm not going to tolerate this, and this, and this," and it made a whole hell of a difference to the experience. And we all know where we stood.
Yeah, I think
I was going to ask about your experience. What are the type of things that you do and say to players before you want to play a game of football? Because I think it's important and it kind of sets the tone. So what's your experience and what have you learned from day one to today?
Yeah, I mean, it's evolved massively. Yeah. But, I mean, basically, it does depend slightly on the age group. Like with younger age.
Let's say adults. Let's say adults, because this is the challenge of developing, because you mentioned that your first game was a train wreck to get up past because it wasn't good.
So what I say
let's stick to adults because that's where we have the curve of development.
That's fine. No. So I'll say, in my experience, like footballers do not want the correct decision. They just want the decision that best suits them. And I completely understand that, but I don't care who wins. And I'm going to just say it as I see it. And you're just going to have to go along with that. I make it very clear about the way that I'm going to do the linesmen. If the linesmen are impartial, I make it very clear that offsides and throw-ins, I go with their decision unless I think they're actually asleep. Okay, so just go with that. All the fouls and everything on the pitch. I said, with the introduction of sin bins, I mean, I'm of the opinion that it's such a shame that we have to have sin bins, but they are there. And so I'm very clear. Like, I understand that the referee will always get it wrong and the player is always right. I do understand that's how it is. Absolutely. But if I need to talk to you for whatever reason, I need you to just suck it up. Okay? And just accept that maybe I saw things in a slightly different way to how you did, and that's just how it's going to be. And if you walk away from me when I'm talking to you, you will get a sin bin. And there is no grey area there. If someone is foolish enough, as was the case in the youth game I did the other week, someone's foolish enough to then add to that with some insults and some swearing, having been given a sin bin, because they walked away, which is exactly what I said them not to do, then that might end up with further cautions as well. Because for me, I need to be able to talk to these people about whatever it is, because the thing is, like you said about kicking the ball away, Rob, an automatic yellow card. I want to give. I always want. I do. Despite what, if anyone's watching this and I've refereed them, despite what I think, I always try and give the players the benefit of the doubt. Right, I really do. Like, so, you know, I did an adult game the other week. This player, he'd attempted to take a player on when he could have passed it. He didn't pass it. And he ended up losing the ball, and the ball went out for a throw. And he was clearly just hacked off with himself, like just furious with himself, because he saw the option that he should have made, and it was just livid. So as a kind of like a knee-jerk reaction to that, he kicked the ball away, and it wasn't, in no way was it kind of like towards another player, to an official. He was just mad with himself, and it was relatively early in the game. I would say he was a player with ability, and he was just annoyed, and I completely understood it. So while the other team are going, "Ref, you kick the ball away," whatever, I was like, hang on a second. I get it. You're frustrated. I do understand. Let's not do that again. All right. And so I've set the standard there, and for me, even if it's not understood, that's also setting the standard for his team. And I might give the other team, maybe I'll give them one opportunity, because otherwise you get the whole, well, the other team guy did it, and I'll give them an opportunity, but then we're on a level, because I've understood, and it's like, I get it. He's not kicking it away because, at a player, or like to be malicious. He was like 19, 20 years old, and he's just annoyed with himself, and I get it. But there's a line where, frustration becomes aggression, becomes vindictive, and I think that this is not a conversation I have with the players before the game necessarily, but this is what I'm watching out for, and as a referee, what I think if I may be so bold, what I think I do well is I'm constantly talking, and I'm constantly sort of being quite loud about what decisions I'm making, what I'm not making. And the thing is, I don't expect all the players to agree with me, but I do try and make it clear why I've given certain things, so at least they can see where I'm coming from. I see a lot of referees where they're very quiet, they'll give a free kick or whatever it is, and it's just like, no, just accept it. That's what I've given, accept it. And it's like, well, maybe they would accept it if they knew why. And I mean, you don't want to spend the entire time giving the players a lecture, because that doesn't help, I think, either. But just being very clear about setting those boundaries from the beginning. And I mean, for me, just reiterating. And the thing is, it does feel like wasted breath, because, like, oh yeah, ref, yeah, absolutely, yeah, respect, yeah, oh, yeah, no VAR, yeah, absolutely, right, yeah, no, I understand, yeah, for sure, grassroots. And then first minute, oh, what are you doing? And so I, because there's a lot of passion in football, and I think that's a great thing. But it's because I don't want to ever feel like I'm curtailing people's ability to play. I mean, the one that gets me, and this is one thing I do say to, especially at level we're talking about, Rob, things like pass backs. Like, I see so many adult goalkeepers have a complete panic because they're not sure about whether or not something's a pass back, and they end up not picking it up, and then the defence is thinking that whatever, and before you know, they've conceded a goal. And I make it very clear, look, boys, we're at the level we're at, and that's fine. If there's any doubt, it's probably not a pass back. Just go for it. And the worst thing that can happen, you get an indirect free kick, which is surely better than conceding a goal, surely. But and to date, that's not. That's always worked out. And the other one is jumps in the back from particularly from throws, but any kind of high ball, and I make it very clear about that, because I'm not going to have you using the matey in front of you as a launching pad, and then you go, well, how am I meant to win the ball, ref? Well, don't jump on the guy in front of you. Maybe do that. And if you can't win the ball without doing that, then I'm afraid it's not yours to win, is it? But and again, for me, and a little pushes in their back and all that, just making and again, because I've been fortunate enough that I referee a lot of the same teams, so I'm kind of familiar with some of their players sometimes, and I have a little chat about making sure that some of the things that I maybe picked on before, but it's largely just if everyone respects each other and everyone kind of understands, this is why I said right at the beginning of this talk today, Rob, like, I think that, players view referees as being these aliens who have no idea about the football. And someone like that Sheffield United manager, Higginbotham, doesn't help, where he's going, referees don't understand the game. No, that's nonsense. It's nonsense. And coming from a guy who has not had the best of seasons, it's, okay, maybe some of them haven't played. And that's what I was talking about with those, especially those younger referees. Maybe they don't get it. Maybe they don't. I mean, I have played, and I like to think I get it. And I see some of these decisions, younger referees make like, that's not a thing. I have no idea if Howard Webb and all these Graham Scott, if they can play football, I don't care really. But I think it'd be weird to me if they had never played football. That would be weird to me. Like, they must,
if they've literally never kicked a ball.
You know what I mean? Like, that would be that's a very strange situation. I mean, I'd be kind of. I kind of think that maybe they'd play. I don't know. I'm speculating. Do they play in like a little five-a-side league? I mean, that would be fun to play against them, I guess.
I think if Sky did that, if Sky did that, could you imagine the viewership if there was a referees game on TV? If they did an 11-on-11 referees game and they got like a player to referee it or something like just. Yeah. I think it would explode a few minds, because then we would go, oh God, maybe they don't know what they're on about, and why is the right back playing up front, and like why is why is Anthony Taylor in centre midfield and he's stuck at the 6-yard box? Do you know what I mean? That would be interesting. But well, there's a few up there there's a few Premier League refs that I wonder how they move about the pitch. And you mentioned about fitness tests. There's a few referees with some podgy bellies in the Prem, and how they get through those tests, I don't know.
I say fitness test. I mean, it's not.
What is the test? Running 100 metres?
It's some running, but it's not. Compare I think about people like Vinicius Junior or Mbappe, Kyle Walker. Some of these guys who are lightning quick. You're not going to catch up with them. And if they're streaming, how are you going to call something? But I guess the thing is obviously about a good referee is that you're not trying to run as fast as Mbappe. You are trying to make sure that you're in a position that you're not going to be too far away when the action happens, because you also don't want to be too close and get in the way of the action, do you? So it's that positional thing. But it's I think it's I would recommend every single player to go and referee a game and go in there blindly. Go and referee your roughest youth game going and no, seriously, because the thing is,
seriously. So I'm going to interrupt here because I'm going to cut you off at that, because that exact thing happened with us at the weekend. Sam, my brother, he refereed the first half. He's never refereed before. He's quite intelligent about the rules of the game, right? And he said at half time, he said to me at half time, he said, oh my God, when the ball goes over and they flag for offside and your head goes like this and you just do not know because you're following the ball and trying to watch the play, he said it's a whole different thing trying to judge that in the moment. And he said the only thing you can do sometimes. Yeah, exactly. And he said it's difficult. He said it's difficult unless I've got eyes in the back of my head to really know. And said sometimes, yeah, exactly. And he said sometimes, I know it sounds weird because we typically have linesmen that love to put their flag up and cheat. He said, but sometimes your default response is to go to the linesman, the ones that you know that you can't trust and everything. And he said, yeah, it's a different world. He said it's a different experience. And he said that he tried to position him. He said that he said that he went around the centre circle as a default and then would go closer to the action if he needed to, and would kind of like try to stay in those lines to try to follow the play without killing himself, because he's not a qualified ref and everything, but he can walk about and stuff. But yeah, he said it's different because he said that his point of view he said that as somebody that wasn't a referee, his field of scanning was just to follow the ball. That was the easiest thing to do. And he said referees, have to scan the player, their movement, how they've come in, the direction of it, and said that there's a lot more.
You have to predict what they're going to do. You have to kind of like kind of see what the possibilities are, which is why when you've got a great team, it's much easier to do stuff because you can actually because you got a rough idea what they might do. When you got a team that's not very, the ball can come from anywhere at any point, and like it's to help your brother out, Rob. What they recommend is for those who are watching, it's kind of like an S between the right sides of the penalty area, the right hand corner to the right hand corner
to
of
the
other
side,
area.
so the diagonal,
but not like, so we're kind of, it's like a sort of S, sort of kind of loose S.
So you run around the centre circle and create the S around the centre circle.
Loosely, and then of course that's a kind of a rough idea, because then of course the idea is that you've got the linesmen who kind of fill in the gaps,
I see. So you stay. So you never go as a referee.
Yeah.
So you're taught to never go outside of the white line at the edge of the box.
No, not at all. Not at all. I just said this is a rough guideline, and then of course
I see.
But if you use that as a rough map, then you need to go wherever the play is for sure. But if you use that as a rough guide, and then also never let the ball should always be between you and the linesman, if possible. I mean, sometimes again, if players do something which is completely unexpected, which happens at all levels, then sometimes you find yourself in a very awkward position, especially if they're moving the ball around quick. But largely, it's that nightmare thing also. But you want to be as close as you possibly can without affecting the play whatsoever. Sometimes I find it quite interesting. Like, I'm tracking a player. I'm like a couple of meters away from him because they're advancing and they're not being pressed at all, and then. And all the defensive players would dream of being where I was, but he's not fussed because I'm obviously not
hanging at the edge of the box.
And then obviously you need to move because you need to anticipate what they're going to do in that sense. So, this is not. I'm not. This is all information that's available.
No.
And what you learn as you go forward.
But yeah, so Sam, in his referee, when he did his 45 minutes, bless him, he actually did a good job and he tried to control it very well. But he said that there's a lot to consider in the moment when you're dealing with 3 or 4 things at once, and says he understands with people in the air. And so the funniest part of the game for me was the opposition team won a free kick roughly at the edge of our box where the D is, slightly to the right. Of their goal, so their right midfielder in between the 18-yard box and the D, slightly over. And because they're all arguing, they're asking for yellow cards. Sam he's forgot to mark where the wall's supposed to be, and our captain's Connor and I'm in goal, and the players are, I kid you not, 3 yards away from the ball. And I said, because Sam's my brother, I said, Sam, maybe you should get the wall back 10 yards. And then our captain came over and did it for our own team. And he's marking it out himself. And he said, okay, lads, this is where the line is. And he does the proper 10 yards. It's not the little 1, 2. He goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And I thought it was hilarious because, and we took it as, okay, we're not going to cheat and we're not going to stand literally on top of the ball as they've got a free kick. Instead, we're going to actually mark out our own defensive wall 10 yards away. And honestly, our captain Phil didn't do a slight 10-step. He did a full-on 1, 2. He proper basically did a squat and everything and like a forward lunge on either side, sorry. And but again, he said at half-time, he said, that slipped my mind in the moment because
of course,
unless you're really... Exactly. So this is the thing. I do agree. If every player had to... If a qualification for a player was to referee their own game before they played a game, I think you would get a different perspective culturally that would be embedded slowly. It would take forever, but that I think you'd get a different type of take on it for sure.
Because it's about that. It's the constant sort of speculation, and you've got to be. The thing is, I have players saying, ref, you're blowing up everything they're calling. It's like, if I was actually doing that, then the whole game would be free kicks. So don't get me.
Yeah.
I mean, I played a game where there was one defender who without question, every throw-in, he would always say foul throw, ref. and obviously the first couple I'm like, no, it's not. And then I realised his game. He's just looking for just in case. He's just calling it just in case. And it's all those little things which players, again, when you're playing, you don't necessarily see them all. I think, would it change things? I don't know. I think it's a good thing to do. But then some people say doing a bungee jump is a good thing to do. I don't fancy that. So I don't know.
Oh God, no. feet on the grass for me. I wouldn't want to do that. Just a couple of questions then. I've just got one question about. So we've gone through a lot of these experiences. You've mentioned that you've had a bad experience and kind of like what you've learned. So one question, with the county FA or the people that are mentoring you through your journey as a referee, what do they recommend to referees in these moments? Say they have a bad experience at a game, say they have this. What type of support is there for referees from like an institution point of view, a county FA or an FA, or in Reading, I know that, I don't know if you're signed up to it, but they've got the Reading RA, the Referees Association. What type of support do you get around
the Referees
you?
Association is I mean, I suppose it depends what kind of sport you're talking about, Rob, because I
don't know. It's more like help, support, growth, development. What do you have to lean on for these bad moments, these good moments? Yeah, because I don't know.
So sometimes it's like kind of like serious sort of psychological damage could be done by some of the abuse that you get, especially if you're trying to do your best. You're trying to do your best, and it's not working or whatever. It's not like me personally. Other people, I'm sure, are the same. I don't rock up there thinking, "Oh, can't be bothered with this," whatever. Free kick, sure thing. I take it very seriously. So when I've got people sort of then shouting at me, querying, it's like, no. And so the support there for advice is there from the Referees Association. I mean, I'm a member of like a few, referee. It sounds very sad. Referee chat groups, where I will query sort of certain things that happen in games. Did I make the right decision there? In their opinion, it's got a lot of referees who are part of that thing. And then of course, that's so. There are regular meetings from the Referees Association, and different counties are more or less active than others. But all's there. But I think basically, in terms of if it's that bad, then the expectation is that you report the clubs to the FA, and then they will take appropriate steps. Now, I have not ever done that myself. I didn't do it at that game I was talking about because I just felt so out of my depth that it was like, it's like I'd rather you just forgot I did it. Do you know what I mean? That's how I felt at the time.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And I mean, I could have reported them, but I learned a lot from it, despite them being utter. Yeah, so but there is that reporting structure within the FA where you can report teams, and I mean, what the end result of that is, I don't know. Apart in terms of the referee, I know what happens to the clubs, but in terms of the support the referee might get, I don't know what that looks like. I'm not sure how much there is. I mean, the mentoring that you get with regard to progression within your qualifications is 2 games. You get feedback about that, and basically, if you're doing the right things and you've like I said, I'm just waiting on these 5 assistant. I've done 4 now, 4 assistant refereeing. Then I can move up to the level 6. That's all the only thing that's holding me back at the moment. But yeah, and if I'm totally honest, I've not looked in depth at the what goes on at other levels. Apart from the fact it's just more stringent things of the rules. Laws.
Freudian slip.
I think the thing is, what you see, I mean, there's some wonderful books available for those that are interested on refereeing, and the art of refereeing it's quite an old book now. It's not been updated, so some of the laws in it aren't actually still current. But it talks, rather than sort of saying you need to do this, you need to do that, it talks a lot about real practical examples of how the game actually is, not what it's written in the law that the players need to follow this, how it actually is. Like, like he uses actual examples of the way that Pele used to try and fool referees, for example. And, all these, and it's got a picture of Colina on the front, and it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's called The Art of Refereeing.
Yeah. It is. I've got it up on Amazon now. It's from 2005. The Art of Refereeing, Techniques and Advice for Every Soccer Referee. It's not sure I like the word soccer there, but
soccer is, of course, an English term. We know this, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's made in England. We made it. So we originally called football soccer. So I'm not. Yeah, it sounds American. But so by Robert Evans and association. Yeah, so Robert Evans and Edward Bellion. They did the book. It looks good. Got Kalina on the front. Yeah, the goat of refereeing.
There are lots of books available. So some of them are a little bit more kind of matter of fact. But that book is fantastic because it really does. It kind of says, well, players will often be like this, and it gives examples of how how a situation could work or not work, and I found it indispensable. So if anyone wanted to do a bit more reading, I can't recommend that enough. So I like I said, Rob, I'm not sadly not in a position to know how it works in terms of support at higher levels. All I can say is at my level, I mean, the guys from Berks Bucks FA, which is the FA I'm affiliated with, where I've needed advice or whatever, they've been great. But yeah, that's my experience, and I'm sure there are other people who could talk in much more depth and with a lot more information. But yeah,
whenever I do anything and I advise on anything, specifically on my podcast, when I'm dealing with like new teams that are messaging me, again, the reason I started the podcast was I'm inundated with people wanting to know the ins and outs of how to run a football team and grassroots football, and I literally cannot keep up to date with how many people message me and say, you've got A, B, C through to Z, so how do you kind of like get to that point? And largely, again, the county FA here, I'm always saying, if people of any background or creed, be it referees, players, coaches, volunteers, anyone that wants to get involved in football or anyone that wants to be involved in football, and they have a bad day or they need guidance on training, I think the county FA are always the guys to go to first and foremost. They've got professionals that work in day out that just understand the game a lot more, and they're really nice people as well, largely. And with referees in particular, they're the guys that are now dealing with the county FAs are largely controlling the pool of referees for the sake of their development as well. So I would heavily suggest in any walk of life, in football, new team, new players, new managers, to always get in contact with a county FA, because it does burden a lot of stress. And honestly, the amount of people that do not utilise these facilities that are free to us is ridiculous. They would rather struggle in silence than actually deal with an issue. Be it a manager that's trying to recruit new players, and they're like, "Oh, how do you get players in, Rob?" And I'm like, "I put an advert out on the Berks Bucks website," and they're like, "Oh, I've never done that before." But even those little basics. Even those little basics, you can recruit for referees, for players, or volunteers, all in one hub, and it's invaluable. So just one final question for you, Laurence. So the theme today has been experience in refereeing. So from day one, I tend to ask this, from day one to today, what are the biggest things that you've learned from taking this step to being a more like active, prominent referee in the area?
What are the biggest things? What I've learned.
So what have you learned, and what have you? So the development cycle. So, for example, when I run a club, I just within a year I was so much more proficient in admin, understanding rules, understanding players. So what are the big things that you've taken away?
I feel like we covered it, and I've said it a million times. But today alone.
But for the sake of somebody that's never refereed before, let's say there's an 18-year-old Laurence out there today, right? And he's got a better hairline, and he doesn't support Chelsea, and I
would say the most important thing is like you need to learn the laws, but you need to know the culture. You need to watch football, and you need to understand, because I think it's not. if you really want to progress, and then and start by just being on the field, and what have I learned? The number one thing I think I would say to any referee, like before learning everything else, is just realise that football pitch is your house. And this is a line in the Kalina book, actually. It's your house. Like, how would you expect your house to be treated? Like, it's not for that game. It's not whatever ground. It's not the home ground or away ground of any particular team. That is your space. How are you going to organise that space? And how are you going to make sure that people behave in your space? And that's it. And realise that. So like, if you get some parent or some, husband, wife, girlfriend, whatever it is, giving you stick on the side, like, no, absolutely not. I wouldn't have that in my house. I'm not having it here. I once had a player come on with this, like, I call the captains up, and he comes in with his shirt off, smoking a fag to do the coin toss. Absolutely no way in hell. Put your shirt on, put that out, and then, because I think that if you kind of really think that, and it sounds like such a simple thing to say. I mean, for me, it was kind of like really opened it up, like, oh yeah. And then within that house, what are the rules of my house? Well, the rules of my house are the laws of football. All right. But then we have to kind of adapt to the different people that visit, like, particular teams, faster, slower, more skillful, less skillful, whatever it is, we're going to adapt certain things to that, but just, and I think and then read the guidance, read the information, like like in the laws, it doesn't tell you where the best places to stand. That book does, but it doesn't tell you where the best places to stand are. Like for free kicks, for corners, like, because the thing is, the referee courses will take you through where they recommend the best places to stand for example, corners is. But depending on which game you're playing in terms of how the player's set up, you might be stood right in front of the player that's planning on running in. So you need to adjust, and you need to be aware of how the players are playing. And like you said about your brother being aware of what everything else is going on, like, I have particular places that I like to stay, that like to stand depending on set pieces or whatever it is. But depending on what the players are doing, I might massively adjust to that. Like, if they've clearly got no one running in and all their players are kind of going towards the front post, then I'm going to have to readjust myself, because otherwise it's going to be like all tied together. I'm going to miss some stuff. So just being adaptable, knowing the laws, knowing how, having people respect your house, knowing the laws, and then being adaptable to that. That's what I've kind of learned, and it's through watching a lot of matches as well, and kind of seeing both sides. And the thing is, there is no so free. I mean, like I said, we started off, I talked about the Hawkeye for the goal. That's a black and white situation. It's either a goal or it's not a goal. That is one of the very few decisions in football where it is that clear cut. I mean, there was that McAllister sending off in that Liverpool game. Now, the thing is, Liverpool fans go, "Oh, never a red card." Well, actually, the thing is, the referee's not completely out of line for giving that red card. Now, for me,
100%.
For me, he has kind of pulled back just right at the last minute, so he's not gone in with the full force that he could have done, and so that but the referee's got a split second to make that decision, and he's called it, and because it's not like a massive error, which it isn't, VAR held it up. But if he'd given a yellow, I think the same thing would have happened. I think that would have been held up as well. And this is the problem. And this is what players need to accept, that it's not, there is no one, and that is all day. No, not all day. Would you bet your house on it? I don't think you would. It's not, and just kind of referees. But I'm saying this now. Would I have said this 2 years ago? I'm not sure. But I do know that this is what I've learned over the time from having refereed at all different kinds of people, girls, boys, men, women, all sorts, and seeing that. And I coach as well. I mean, I think that, I am involved with that, so I like to think I had one of my players going for a trial at Chelsea this week. So, that it's just coincidental. It's just coincidental, but so I do understand that aspect of it as well. So I think that if your only point of reference is refereeing a football match and you don't watch football, you're not that invested in a team or whatever, I think that you're gonna struggle progressing because the thing is, football, as much as it's about the skills and the techniques and the game, it's about people as well. It's about dealing with people, especially as a referee. You're dealing with people. They say about coaches who've lost the dressing room. Well, they didn't suddenly just become a terrible coach, because but there might be certain things they're not doing, which has meant that the dressing room isn't believe in them anymore, and that happens. And as a referee, you need the players to believe in you, and manage that. And although people might not talk about it, if you've given what you consider, it's a bit soft, ref. Okay, if you think that, I understand, but it's still a foul. A soft foul is still a foul. But then make sure you do try and even it out. And even if your angle's not going to be the same, and you might not necessarily give exactly the same thing, perhaps maybe give it just so the teams can see that you're doing it from both sides, so that they get that parity, because there's nothing worse than it feeling like, because I felt it, oh God, I'm giving everything to this other team here. And maybe it's because they're more skillful. But it's not through intention, it's just because that's how the game's played out. But, and I'm very vocal about those throw-ins if it goes the other way. Just so it seems like I'm giving them something. But it's So that's what I've learned. If that kind of helps.
No, of course, and I think that's.
Bad, Rob. You want to see it from the back?
Oh no, it's not. Oh no, yeah, thank God. I was only kidding, mate. You're a spring chicken. You speak well. You're a great guy. So no, I'm only messing about. But yeah, I'm more offended by the Chelsea thing than anything. But and again, I mean, if I wasn't a Newcastle fan, I say this to my two best friends, Sam and one of my best friends, because I grew up in the 90s watching Newcastle, Shearer, Ginola, Asprilla, Gary Speed, Bobby Robson, the entertainers of the 90s. That was my team. And but if I hadn't supported Newcastle, I had a soft spot for Chelsea. The old Chelsea team with Zola, Hasselbank, Johnson, aka before the Roman Abramovich money came in. I had a soft spot for Chelsea. I like watching them. Yeah, and then they got the money in, and the
more money they got, the more off the cliff they've fallen. It seems. But
and you mentioned about manager turnover and losing the changing room. That was Chelsea every 10 months.
It's a strategy. And it happens every 4 weeks, like it is at Watford or something.
There's that. That's not the managers. That's just the owners having.
Well, there is that.
There's too much money to burn in their pockets. Yeah, but no, so I think it's been a really good talk about referees. I definitely want to have you on our podcast again, Laurence, because there's so much invaluable experience, and maybe we can talk about next time what you've learned from today to maybe 6 months or a year down the line when you've potentially got to your level 6 and everything. I think that'd be a really good talk as well. Talk about your own development as well, and particularly about the younger referees as well. I think you might have. So important. It happens. Everybody, from my point of view, everybody in football has to develop, and you're not going to be perfect overnight. And there seems to be the expectation that when no matter how you enter football, your role, let's say you're a chairman, a treasurer, finance officer, you work for the county FA, you have to learn everything. And there's too much pressure on people to get it right straight away because football is so goddamn cutthroat, even at grassroots level. You lose players over friendships. The friendship groups leave and come in. It happens so quickly. You've got to be spot on with finances and admin, and you've got to keep up to date, and you've got to be on top of people, but you can't be because you're not too attached to them. There's a lot that goes into it. And then when it comes to players have a different attitude, managers have a different attitude, referees have a different world and view that they have to look at the game in. So people that come into, and what I'd recommend, if you're a new referee, just don't feel that pressure. You've got support, you've got people around you. You know that you're going to have a few bad games. It's part of the cycle. When I started Hype Train, just lastly, when I started Hype Train, one person that's been, there's two people really, maybe three, that have been really imperative for my development at the club. One of them was my captain, Vince. He got me in line because as a coach and as a person, he said, you need to sort your stuff out. You need to get everything in line. One of them is Owen as well. We know Owen Jones. He's a player. He's one of my committee members. He talks to me about my, not my attitude, but my aptitude on the sideline as a coach. And he had a really frank talk with me, and I'm happy to share the story as we to end the podcast. We had a pre-season game in July, and last season we only did Sunday league football. We're typically a Saturday team and we offer Sunday football, and we played a game and we lost 7-0. It was a really bad day, but it is what it is. Pre-season doesn't matter too much the score. And in the car park after the game, he berated me about my attitude on the sideline as a coach. Sometimes he said, look, Rob, 99% of the time there's no issues, you've been great, but that 1% of the time is what we need to cut out. Because, and again, like, new referees will have a learning curve, new managers as well, new players have learning curves, and nobody is exempt from it. There's times where I was kicking over corner flags. It was there was just any, God, I just regret it. Sometimes I'm shouting too loudly or I'm frustrated, right? Everybody gets frustrated, and especially as somebody that's used to playing, and then I'm all of a sudden on the sideline dictating, doing the old thing with my arms going everywhere, doing the Mark Hughes with the note just says shoot on it and everything. And I'm just, you have to learn these processes, right? You have to learn the basics. You have to learn how to engage with people. And yeah, Owen just grilled me and said, we need to make sure that you lose these hothead moments. But he understands why they've got to me. But it said, yeah, if you're going to deal with younger people or deal with older people or want to retain people, he just read me the right act. And I thought it was the best thing for me. And I felt really low because we had a really frustrating Sunday season. And it wasn't me getting frustrated at players. It was me going livid at other teams. I didn't make enemies, but I didn't ingratiate myself to the opposing team sometimes, because every game it seems the liners that we had or the managers were just cheating, and it just become a pandemic for the whole season. And I just was losing my head after 1 minute of a game. We were clearly onside. The flag would go up. I'd be on the sideline kicking stuff over, and I was losing my rag. It got so bad that we had one game near the end of the season where I just ended up on our VO camera just underneath it. I've just not had a paddy, but I've just lost my plot, and I'm shouting at the opposition manager saying, you're just cheating this, cheating that. And I couldn't believe, and I was, but that's just, not that I've got a temper, but I'm so passionate about things.
There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you keep it in check.
There's nothing, but it's more that I'm a passionate person, and I hate to see people, like, the thing about a manager is that I have to look at going, okay, if we score two perfectly good onside goals and they're both ruled out, if you have a good player, they're going to say, I don't want to turn up again. Or they've got that capacity to say, screw it, I'm not going to turn up again. And as soon as that happens, my head goes into that mode of, oh my God, what's the fallout going to be from this moment? I take that out in the moment as I'm just there under my video camera, like, not screaming, but not acting proper, and keeping a standard. And Owen said to me, you need to make sure that we build on last year, and you not only maintain a standard, but you grow and develop your standard, especially when you're going to bring in a lot of younger people that are going to look up to you. Because last year we had a lot of players that were my age or older. This year we've got players that are 20, 21 in the team. And all of a sudden it's kind of like, you can't act like that around, I know that we sound like grandpas right now, but we can't act like that around younger people. We have to hold the bar as high as we can and never deviate from it. And to go back to the referees, referees go through the same procedure as well. A lot of the referees I speak with say that they've had clangers of games, they develop, they learn. And just like managers, players, you've got to go through hardships to get to where you want to go.
Exactly.
No matter the walk in life and football, it's life. It's life. Yeah. But so, conversations with people like Owen and the County FA and people that really help you. These are tough love conversations, but at the end of the day, it's like, there's a phrase in any sport, in any type of sport, it's just business, and you're still friends afterwards. So you have to distinguish the business side from the personal side of it, because at the end of the day, it's not just about you, it's about where you're going to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years. And hopefully referees that have watched this as well have taken some good pointers away from yourself. They can learn stuff from this. And yeah, it's just been absolutely pleasure talking to you, Laurence. And for everybody watching at home, Laurence, I'll let you say goodbye. But yeah, I think it's been great having you on, and I can't wait to have you on the podcast in the future.
Well, thank you very much, Robert.
Right, everyone,
and good luck with the rest of the season yourself, sir. And,
thanks everyone, and catch you next time. So, putting a bow on today's podcast, I would like to thank Laurence for all of his time today to talk to me in length and at depth about some of his experiences, particularly early doors getting his refereeing badges in within the last 2 years and working up that ladder at the local county FA to really get his foot on the ladder with refereeing. If you're a referee or a volunteer or a coach, official, it doesn't matter your background in football. Hopefully you've picked up a thing or two today about our experiences and our growth and our development. That's kind of the theme on my podcast so far after 10 plus episodes. It's all been about growth. It's all been about development, building foundations, building structures. And today was the first time that I personally had the opportunity to speak to a referee in particular. And I'm very thankful for Laurence for taking his time. And I'm definitely going to be having him back on board to talk about where he's going to be from year 2 to year 3 and so on and so on and so on. So apart from that, if you're in Laurence's boat, Laurence reached out to me personally to talk about his own experiences within the game. And if you would like to get in touch with me and be on the podcast, talk about your own experiences, I would absolutely love it. Whether you hate me or whether you like me, it's all the same to me. I just want to talk and grow and learn and develop. You can reach out to us via our email, which I'll put in our lower third, and you can also contact us on our website at hypetrainfc.com. And yeah, apart from that, we've got a lot more coming up on the podcast for you. We'll be talking to a fixture secretary within my local league on Saturday. And we're also going to be having more interviews and more presentations coming up about grassroots football in general and more to do with the rules. We've got some more things coming up with our video camera as well. Aside from that though, I'd like to thank everybody for their time. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're on the road to 1,000 followers, of course. We've been growing a lot, and I just want to thank everybody so far for their time watching, commenting, and providing me my own personal feedback on the podcast as well. Aside from that, it's been a long evening here filming with Laurence, so I'd like to say thank you one last time, and of course, as ever, believe the hype.